Welcome to Renesmee. Here I am with What If Bella Had a Baby Boy. Subscribe for more Twilight fiction audiobooks. Bella Pav. Rose, I had drunken so much blood in the last hour I wasn't sure if I could hold it for much longer. Again, she asked while adding a chuckle. I think I've drunk 2 gallons in the last hour, I explained. Without any further questions, Edward and Jake moved out of the way as Rose came to pick me up so she could take me to the bathroom. Can I walk? I asked. My legs are so stiff. Are you sure? Edward asked. Rose'll catch me if I trip over my feet. Which could happen pretty easily, since I can't see them, I said. Thankfully Rose set me gently on my feet. I let my legs and arms stretch out, wincing a little as my underused muscles extended. That feels good, I sighed. Ugh, but I'm huge, I exclaimed as I looked down at my stomach. When no one told me otherwise, I decided that they thought so too. I was so big, but when I thought of what was making my stomach so big I hardly even minded. One more day, I said to my baby as I patted my stomach. At that moment my baby decided to give me a little nudge, and that reminded me of why I was up in the first place. Bathroom first, thinking about my baby second. Alrighty then, I said, and then I slowly made my way up the stairs and into the bathroom. Rose left me at the bathroom door to give me as much privacy as was possible. When I was done she shadowed me on my way back down the stairs. This was the part one was a little worried about. It would be much easier for me to fall going down than going up. A fall from this far up would be fatal to the baby. Fortunately I made it down the stairs without any incident. See, I told you I could make it to and from the bathroom without hurting myself, I told Edward as I went to go and take my former position on the couch. When I was settled, Edward sat down on the opposite side of the couch and pulled my feet up on his lap. I know, love, but you forget that it's in my nature to worry about you, Edward told me. I smiled at him and said, thanks for caring. I can't wait for Carlisle to come back so he can deliver our baby. It was such a relief to finally be able to say things like this out loud. Edward was finally coming around to the idea that tomorrow we would have a child, not some monster that I'm sure he had imagined in his head. Oh, how I really wished we would have a baby boy. Just like the boy that I had pictured in my head the moment I felt my little nudger for the first time. He'll be here tomorrow, love, he reassured me. Are you ready to be a mom? Rosalie asked me. I'm more than ready. I don't know how people can wait 9 months for this. I feel like he can't come soon enough, I answered her wholeheartedly. So you're still hoping for a boy then? Jake asked me. I had a strange feeling that he was forcing himself to ask me questions about the baby and stay nonchalant. Most definitely. I can't get the picture of a little boy out of my head. I tried to copy his tone of nonchalance but wasn't sure if I did too good a job of it. His expression faltered for half a second, but that was long enough for me to see the pain on his face. He shouldn't be here. I should be strong enough to tell him to leave if that's what he wanted to do. But I couldn't. I don't know why I couldn't, but it was as if there was a pull that made me want him here. It was like I was never fully at peace unless he was near me. I wish I could just get over him. I was about to start a family with Edward, for crying out loud. I chose him and I would never regret it, so why couldn't I let go of Jacob? None of my thinking was helping. I was just going around in circles. I'm sure the baby wasn't enjoying feeling my stress either. I just needed to relax, so I settled into the couch for a nap. Wow, I just woke up and I'm already going back to sleep. Well, in my defense, it really had been a long and emotional day. I was woken by the sounds of doors opening and closing and people rushing up and down the stairs. I finally decided to open my eyes and was surprised to find that Carlisle, Esme, Jasper, and Emmett were back already. I realized that I must have slept through the entire night and part of the morning. Edward, Emmett, and Jasper were in the process of moving a ton of medical equipment up to, I was guessing, Carlisle's study. Ah, good morning, Bella. I'm so glad that you're awake, Carlisle told me once he spotted me watching the boys. Good morning, Carlisle. When did you get here? I asked him while I moved to sit up and stretch my back. It really wasn't doing me any good sleeping on the couch every night. Well, we got back in town early this morning, but then we made a little side trip to the hospital to get some things that I may need for the delivery. We just got to the house about 30 minutes ago, he answered. That's good, I said, and with that I remembered that today I would have my baby and was suddenly nervous. But as wrapped up as I realized that something was wrong. Where are Jacob and the girls? I asked, looking around. The girls are helping set up my study properly, he replied. For some reason he looked a little hesitant to tell me where Jacob was. And as for Jacob, Edward Said, he left early this morning and said he would come back to check on you later today or maybe tomorrow, he finally finished. No wonder he didn't want to say anything. Oh, I said, unable to think of anything else to say. Of course Jacob wouldn't want to be here. He didn't fit in with the scene. It was his choice and I wasn't going to worry about it. If he wants to leave then he could. Just when I might have gone over the edge with worry and grief for Jacob, I got a little kick from my baby. Just like that, the nervous flutters were back and I couldn't wait to be a mom. Carlisle left me to my thoughts then and went to go help the boys. Okay, just take deep breaths, Bella, I thought to myself. This is what you wanted. Edward is your husband and know you're getting what you never thought to ask for his baby. You can do this, you'll be a great mom and you'll have Edward there to help you raise our child. When I was done with my internal pep talk, the boys were done with remodeling Carlisle's study into an impromptu hospital room. So Bella, Carlisle started, this is what I want to try and do for your delivery. Can you hold that thought, Carlisle? I need a real quick human moment, I told Carlisle, because at that moment I got the urge to pee so suddenly I wasn't sure if I would make it up the stairs. Of course you can, Bella, he said with a smile. Do you need any help, love? Edward asked me as I stood up off the couch. No, I got it, I said with firm conviction. Yes, my muscles were a little under-exercised, but they were only going to get better if I started to use them again. Okay, he said, still a little unconvinced. But if you need any help, don't hesitate to call for someone. Sure thing, I told him, already knowing I wouldn't need anyone's help. As I made my way up the stairs, I was proud to realize that I made it up with less difficulties than yesterday. See, I was right. All I needed was a little practice using my legs again and I would be fine. I was walking into the restroom when it happened. It felt like I might have wet my pants. So I could see two options. Option 1. My pregnant bladder just couldn't take it anymore and I wet myself, although that didn't seem too likely. Therefore option 2. My baby was coming faster than I expected. Carlisle did say that I was very close to being 40 centimeters, so it didn't seem too unlikely that my water may have broke. Well, I guess I should tell Carlisle about this before the first contraction hit. I made my way down the stairs as quickly as my pregnant legs would carry me. As soon as I was downstairs, Carlisle pounced and didn't give me a chance to say anything. Good, you back, Bella, he started. Edward and I were talking and we both agree that I should make the delivery as soon as possible, so here's what I'm thinking about doing. The first thing I want to do is try and induce your labor, that way there may be less difficulties. Then if that doesn't work, you may have to have a type of C-section of sorts. So what do you think? He finally asked me when he was done. I honestly think that's a great idea, but it may be unnecessary, I told them while trying to keep my voice calm. Love, what do you mean unnecessary? We need to get the baby out of you before he can hurt you unintentionally, Edward Said before I was even done speaking. Edward is right, it's just too risky to leave the baby in you for much longer, Carlisle agreed with Edward right away. I know that, but it's unnecessary because I'm pretty sure that my water just broke, I said every word slowly so they could take it all in. With that said, Carlisle started asking me questions. Are you positive? Tell me exactly what happened. Well, I thought that I had to pee, but when I got upstairs I wasn't so sure anymore. I started, it felt like I totally wet my pants, but then I started thinking about the baby and I wasn't so sure anymore. Wow, I never thought to think that Bella might be able to deliver this baby normally, Carlisle was in awe, thinking to himself. Everyone else was in shock. Not a single person in the crowd of 7 said a word. It didn't even look like they were breathing. As my eyes roamed over their shocked, senseless faces, the first contraction hit and I screamed out loud. Bella Pav. There were no words to describe the pain I felt in that moment. I had to hold on to the newel post to keep from falling over. My nails dug into the wood as the contraction ended and left me panting. In a flash, everyone was around me trying to make sure I was all right. Edward's voice was the loudest over the scrambled chatter. Love, are you okay? And we need the truth, you can't downplay it, it won't help you or the baby. Yes, I'm fine, Edward, I told him between pants. It just really hurts, although I guess that's normal, isn't Carlisle? I asked in an attempt to calm Edward down some. Bella's right, Edward. It's quite normal for a contraction to hurt, Carlisle answered, still looking a little awestruck at the thought that I would be able to deliver my baby normally. Well, I guess first thing we should do is get Bella upstairs and situated before the next contraction hits, he continued. With that said, Edward wasted no time swooping me up into his arms and carrying me upstairs. I didn't protest this time because I knew there was no way I would make it up the stairs on my own this time. Edward gently set me down on the hospital bed in the center of the room, surrounded by big, bulky machines. No sooner did he set me on the bed than did the next contraction hit. This one was even worse than the first one. I couldn't help but scream out loud, and I had no control of what was coming out of my mouth. Damn it, Edward, I yelled at him, not too aware of what I was saying. Why the hell did you give in? You're supposed to be a strong man. You couldn't keep it in your pants for a little while longer. I wasn't too sure why I was mad at him, but I could only think of how it was his fault that I was pregnant in the first place. Why are you yelling at me, love? You're the one who was ready to seduce me because I wouldn't give in, he replied. It sounded like he was trying not to upset me, but unlucky for him I was already way past upset. Exactly, you're the strong one. You should have turned me down time and time again, but no, you just gave in to your needs. I was still upset, but I was starting to calm down as the contraction ended. I saw Carlisle give Edward a, just agree with her and don't fight, look. Yes, you're right. I should have been stronger and told you no. It's all my fault. I'm sorry, love, he told me in a patronizing tone. Carlisle was now hooking me up to a heart monitor and trying to start an IV at the same time. I was about to tell Edward the first was being absurd, but I could feel yet another contraction on its way. These seemed to be coming faster than usual. Maybe it was because my baby was half vampire. Edward Cullen, don't you dare patronize me just so you don't have to fight with me. For some reason I was yelling again. Just then the contraction got worse. My baby must be ready to come out soon, fuck. Damn it, Edward, haven't you ever heard of a fucking condom? Now I didn't even care what I was saying or who I was yelling at. I just knew that someone had to be responsible for this. Edward now looked completely lost for words, and that wasn't really helping my temper. Fortunately, Carlisle started talking before I could yell at Edward again. Okay, Bella, I'm pretty sure the baby is ready to come. Somehow he was still completely calm. Suddenly Alice, Rose, and Esme were helping me out of my sweatpants. We're going to wait outside the room with Emmett and Jasper, but if you need us just call us, Alice told me as they started to back out of the room. Okay, thank you, I said, glad I was able to not scream at them. It seems that I was right and the baby is most definitely ready to come out, Carlisle told me as Edward came to stand by my head and took my hand. After Carlisle had taken his place at the end of the bed, he told me, now you are going to have another contraction pretty soon, and when it comes I want you to push as hard as you can, okay? Okay, I'll be ready, I told him, but I wasn't sure if that was the truth. Now I could feel the contraction coming on and it felt like a big one. I screamed again, but this time it was a wordless shriek instead of senseless accusations pointed at my loving husband. Push, Bella, Carlisle told me. I squeezed Edward's hand tight and pushed as hard as I could. You're doing great, Bella, I can see the head now. Just another big push or two and you should be done, Carlisle soothed me as I panted heavily. When the next contraction came I pushed even harder than I did the first time. Carlisle told me that just one more push should do the trick. For some reason, even though 5 seconds ago I was yelling at him, Edward decided to start coaching me. Come on, love, you are doing so well. You just need one more push, you can do it. Thankfully the next contraction was on its way, so I couldn't yell at him like I wanted to. I'm not sure why, but his coaching was getting on my nerves. When the contraction came I squeezed Edward's hand for dear life and was glad that he wasn't human so it didn't hurt him. I pushed one last time and then it was all over. Wonderful, Bella, the baby's out. I guess Carlisle felt the need to tell me since there was no cry to announce the presences of my baby. Is he all right? I asked Carlisle as he cut the umbilical cord. I was slightly worried about why he wasn't crying. Yes, she is perfectly healthy, he told me. I asked him as he cleaned and wrapped her up in a blanket. I had a daughter, not a little baby, Edward. Well, this was a big surprise to me. I wonder if Edward was happy that he got a daughter. While I was picturing a miniature him, was he picturing a miniature me? Yes, she, Edward. Bella, say hello to your daughter, Carlyle told me as he handed me the wrapped up bundle. There, wrapped up in a small blanket, was my daughter. Her eyes were a familiar chocolate brown while her hair seemed to be a strange shade of bronze. All of her features were sharp and angular. Her skin was hot to the touch and I could feel her heartbeat underneath her skin. Renesmee, so beautiful, I breathed. I turned around to look at Edward and was glad to see the expression of awe and pure happiness on his face. Yes, you are most definitely beautiful at the very least, little Renesmee. Edward sighed, still looking a little dazed. Can I hold her, love? He asked tentatively. He looked unwilling to break up my moment with our daughter but eager to get to know her too. Of course you can. I granted his request and handed him Renesmee. I started to tear up at the sight of Edward holding our baby and looking at her with such love and devotion. She looks a lot like you, I told him. Really? I think she looks more like you, he said. Well, either way she's gorgeous. At that moment he cocked his head to the side, then gave Renesmee back to me and covered my lower half with a thick blanket. At first I was real confused, but then the rest of the family came into the room. Apparently they couldn't wait any longer and wanted to see the newest Cullen. Everyone except for Jasper came in and told me how beautiful Renesmee was. It took me a second to realize the reason why Jasper just stood in the doorway instead of coming in the room. The blood. Even though Carlyle had cleaned Renesmee up, she was still covered in dry blood. I wasn't in much better shape, having just given birth and whatnot. Well, then Jasper would just have to meet his niece later, in a more comfortable situation. I knew he wouldn't do anything on purpose at least, but I still didn't want to take unnecessary risks. Bella, can I hold her? Rose asked me. It looked like she would be crying if it were possible. Of course you can, Rose. I'm sure your niece is dying to meet her aunt, I told her, trying to make her feel good. I really was grateful for the part Rosalie played in this whole thing, even if she was just acting out of her selfish craving for a child. Rose held her so carefully, like she was afraid to break her, which I guess could be the case seeing as Renesmee was a newborn baby. After Rose had her fill of Renesmee, she passed her around to everyone else, then she was finally given back to me. She's perfect. You two should be proud, Esme told us with all of her motherly kindness. Thank you, Esme. Bella and I are both happy to have everyone's praise. It really means a lot to us, Edward told her. After I had given into a huge yawn, he told everyone, I want to thank all of you for all of your help throughout this whole thing, but I think it's time for Bella to sleep. Yes, I think you're right, Edward. It's been a long day for her, Carlyle agreed. With that said, everyone started to leave the room and Carlyle unhooked me from all the machines. All the while I sat there with my daughter in my arms and Edward standing behind me looking at the both of us. Bella Pav. We went to Edward's room and I was surprised to find that both the gold bed and a new crib were in there. Although I guess I should have known that the Cullens would have already made preparations for Renesmee and me. After a little hesitation, I left Edward with his baby while I went to take a much-needed shower. It was really gross being covered with blood and God knows what else. I was grateful for the familiar scent of my shampoo as I showered. It helped me to think. I really was a mother now, and it scared the heck out of me. Although I already loved my precious daughter, I didn't know if I would be a good mother. I had no idea how to take care of a child. I never even babysat during high school. Wasn't I supposed to have this motherly instinct that told me how to take care of my baby and show me what was best for her? Well, where the heck was it? I was on my way to a full-scale panic attack when I heard Edward laughing and my baby making little gurgled noises. I instantly relaxed. I wasn't in this alone. I had Edward here to help me get through this. We would be kind and loving parents to Renesmee and we would help each other along the way. Edward Pav. I was lying against the headboard with my knees bent so I could prop up Renesmee against them. We were just looking at each other. I was so excited to have a daughter with Bella. For so long I had thought that there was no possibility of Bella and I having kids. I had never been so happy about being wrong. I know that Bella was hoping for a little boy, but secretly I had wanted a girl all along, a little princess that I could spoil rotten. Her eyes were the exact color Bella's were. They were so beautiful. I never wanted to look away from them. I really didn't deserve her, or Bella for that matter. Her mind wasn't developed enough yet to be thinking words, but I could make do with just emotions. As long as she was happy, that was all that mattered. Right now she was content and a little impatient. I wondered why. Maybe she was impatient to see her mom again. Or was the impenitentness actually hungering? I couldn't tell. I hoped that I would be able to relate to the problems that she would have while growing up. It had been near 90 years since I had been a real teenager, and even longer since I had been a child. Things were so much simpler back then. Kids didn't have to worry about anything other than their chores. Of course I would have the advantage of knowing what Renesmee was thinking, so it would be easier to understand why she was upset. Or was that wrong, to use my mind-reading abilities to help her? I doubted that Renesmee would want me in her head and seeing things that she wanted to keep from me. Well, we would just have to figure this out step by step. I was glad to have Bella by my side as we raised our child. There was no way I could do this by myself. At that moment I heard a single word come from Renesmee's mind: Daddy. It came out sounding like a question. I guess she picked the word up from when she was in the womb. After we found that I could hear the baby Rosalie, and Bella always referred to me as Daddy. She was asking for confirmation now. Asking if I was her dad. Yes, little Renesmee, I'm your daddy, I whispered to her. At that she tried to smile, but it was so lopsided that it made me laugh, and she tried to laugh too, but it came out slurred. A few moments later Bella came out of the shower with wet hair and sweats on. So long short shorts and lacy tops. We were back in the real world, and we were parents now too. I guess it didn't really matter what she wore as long as she was comfortable, but I would still miss the more reveling clothes she wore on the island. As soon as Bella saw Renesmee and me, a huge smile spread across her face. I suppose she was glad to see that happiness had replaced despair as the dominant emotion on my face. She quickly climbed into bed and sat next to me. "What are you doing?" she asked, looking at our beautiful daughter and wondering what I ever did to deserve two amazing women in my life. "I'm still baffled at how I earned the first one," I told her honestly. She thought. "Well, the only reason our daughter is beautiful is because you're the dad," she said. I snorted at that, but she acted like she didn't notice and continued, "And you deserve two amazing women in your life because you've been alone for too long and it was time for you to have a family." I stared at her and silently wondered how she always knew what to say to make me feel better about myself. I really didn't deserve her or Renesmee, but there was an angel up there who gave Bella a family, and for some reason I was allowed into it. Bella and I continued to watch Renesmee and were surprised when she quietly yawned and fell asleep. "I guess now we know that she sleeps," Bella said as she put Renesmee into her crib. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought she wouldn't sleep, I told Bella as she got back into bed. "Well, let's see," Bella started. "She's warm-blooded, she sleeps, her skin seems strong and it doesn't give like a human's would, and her eyes wouldn't let anyone with the right knowledge know that she's part vampire. Can you think of anything else?" she asked me when she was done with her list. "No, love, I think you got it all," I told her. "I guess only time will tell what her diet's like." "Yeah, I guess you're right," she yawned. I looked at her and she seemed so tired I was surprised she had stayed awake for this long. She really hadn't gotten a good night's sleep in over a month. "Sleep, my love," I told her as I gently wrapped her up in my arms. I was happy to finally be able to do this again. She sighed and relaxed into my embrace. "I've missed you," she told me, and I knew exactly what she meant. "I've missed you too, love," I told her, and with that Bella fell asleep in my arms for the first time in what seemed like forever. As Bella slept, I split my time between looking at Bella and Renesmee. They both looked so peaceful sleeping. "Edward, thank you for letting me keep Renesmee," Bella mumbled almost incoherently. I was happy to hear her talk in her sleep again, but I wished that she had said something else. With her words I was reminded of the fact that I had of Renesmee as a monster and had wanted to get rid of her. I wanted to kill her. To never give her a chance to live. I knew that Bella would never let me feel guilty for it. She would tell me that I was just trying to keep her safe. Bella could tell me that all she wanted to, but I would always feel guilty for wanting to kill my daughter. Looking at Renesmee now, I couldn't imagine hurting her. She was too precious. Well, I would just have to make it up to her by giving her everything she needed and wanted, no matter what it was. I would give her all the love I had and anything her heart desired. Hopefully if she ever found out about me wanting her gone, she would understand and wouldn't hate me for it. Unfortunately all I could do was hope. Bella paused. One minute I was happily dreaming about my new family and the next I was being woken by a baby's anguished cry. By the time my eyes had adjusted to the dark light and I sat up, Edward was already cradling Renesmee, trying to calm her. "Shish, shish, Renesmee, it's okay, nothing's going to hurt you," Edward was telling her over and over again. I got up and walked over to where he was. "What happened?" I asked him. "She was having a nightmare," he answered me. Then he looked at me and must have seen how tired I was because he told me, "Love, you can go back to bed if you want, I can handle her on my own." "Are you sure?" I asked him. "I don't mind helping if you need me to, plus I don't want you to have to do all the hard work while I sleep." "I'm sure, love, and I don't mind if I have to stay with her all night." "You need sleep." "I don't," he said. "All right," I told him, still a little hesitant. "Honestly, love, I'll be fine, I promise," he told me. With that I climbed back into bed and watched Edward and Renesmee until I fell asleep. Edward and I had a lot of changing to do. We would have to get used to Renesmee waking up in the middle of the night, and feeding her, and a lot of other stuff. One day she would be a teenager and I wouldn't know what to do with her. I was so glad to have Edward by my side because there was no way I could do this on my own. Thank God we had each other because we were the freshmen of parenthood. BOV. When I woke up in the morning, it took me a while to gain the courage to open my eyes and see if everything had been a dream. There were a few things that made me certain that it wasn't a dream, like the fact that I was really comfortable and not on the living room couch, and the gentle snoring of someone else. With these things in mind, I slowly opened my eyes and turned to see Edward's tender gaze. "How are you this morning, love?" he asked me while softly caressing my face. I was so glad that he was finally touching me again. The last time he had touched me with such affection was before we left the island. After that I was even more fragile than usual, and Rose wouldn't let anyone, let alone him, come into touching distance anyway. I leaned into his touch while I answered his question. "I'm fine, a little hungry, but I feel better than I have in a long time." "Well, I'm glad that you're feeling better, and I think I can take care of the hungry part," he told me, still stroking my face as I smiled at him. "Is there anything in particular that you're craving?" "No, not really, anything sounds good to me." Then after a moment's thought I added, "Just anything but eggs, I don't think I could even stand the smell of them right now." At that he ruffled my hair and said, "Wow, and here I thought that you'd never get tired of eggs. It's all you've been eating for over a month." "Exactly, so now I've grown tired of them," I explained. "Well, okay then, I'll go downstairs and get you breakfast and you stay here and rest," he told me as he made his way to the door. Normally I would have objected and insisted that I get my own food, but I really hadn't had any real alone time with my baby and I was being greedy. Once the door closed again, I jumped out of bed and tiptoed to the crib where Renesmee was sleeping. She looked so peaceful with her eyes closed, body relaxed, and lips slightly parted. Her little soft snore was so adorable I couldn't help but smile at the sound of it. I let my mind wander as I watched Renesmee sleep. I went over all the little details that had brought us here today. My honeymoon, the long days and nights fighting for my baby, giving birth to her, and even Jacob. I hadn't seen him since the day before Renesmee was born. For some reason I figured he would want to stay by my side and spend all the time he could with me because he thought I was going to die, and if I didn't then I would be worse than dead. At least in his opinion I would be. Well, he would come around hopefully. The need to have him close to me was gone, but I still wondered if he was happy wherever he was. He was still my friend after all. Just because he was having a hard time accepting the choice I made didn't mean that all the friendship I felt toward him had diminished. I hoped that he still felt some kind of friendship towards me after all that I had put him through. I suddenly started to worry that he would never come back. That he would think Edward had changed me into a vampire and he wouldn't even want to see me. Before I could go into a full-scale panic attack, Edward walked into the room with my breakfast and a worried look on his face. "Are you okay, love?" he asked me. "Jasper can feel your panic all the way downstairs. It's actually quite funny. You have him curled up into the fetal position." Now he had a slight smile on his face, though he was still clearly worried. "Oh, I'm sorry, poor Jasper," I said as I tried to calm myself down. "It's okay, you don't need to apologize. Just tell me what's bothering you so much." He set the food down on the nightstand and called me over to sit by him on the bed. I sat down next to him and he wrapped his arms around me. Okay, so I was kind of wondering where Jacob was and when I would get the chance to see him again. Then I started thinking that if he believed I had died and you changed me he would never come around again, I told him. Then a new possibility occurred to me and I was even more frightened than I had been a second ago. Or maybe he thinks you changed me and he went back to Sam to tell him and they're planning to come and destroy the family. At this new thought I couldn't even breathe. Bella, calm down, everything is better than you think, he said when I started to hyperventilate. He took a deep breath before continuing. When Jacob came back from his day at the park I asked him to give me permission to change you if I had to and he gave it. He is the alpha, not Sam, so now the wolves can't get mad about me changing you. Yes, he does know that you could be a vampire right now and that's probably very hard for him to live with, so he's staying away. Although the wolves are still here protecting us from the other pack, by now I was shocked speechless. Whoa, wait, the wolves are still here? I asked when I found my voice again. Yes, my love. Sam doesn't know that you have already given birth to Renesmee or that Jacob gave his permission to let me change you. He told me patiently they could come at any time to try and kill Renesmee or check if you are a vampire. They are completely in the dark, so Jacob feels we could still use the protection. When he finished talking he let me take it all in. Jacob was still here protecting my family and he had given his permission to let Edward change me. He really was such a great person and I regretted ever causing him pain. And even though in my opinion he deserved it, I would give him all the time he needed to gather the courage to finally come and see if I had been changed or not for himself. He had given up everything for my new family and me. My patience was the least I could give him in return. Well, that's very kind of him. I'll need to make a mental note to thank him for it later. The tone of my voice told Edward that I didn't want to talk about that anymore and thankfully he didn't push it. So what did you get me for breakfast? I asked him, trying to change the subject. Well, I decided that you should still try to eat healthy since you just gave birth, so I made you some oatmeal and toast. I hope that's okay, he said as he handed me the tray. It's perfect, I told him as I dug into my food. It was delicious, as usual. Once I had finished eating Edward and I drifted to the crib and looked at Renesmee. I'm so glad she has your eyes, love, he told me, that way I'll never have to lose them. Since she got my eyes I'm happy she got your hair, I responded. I don't think I'll ever get tired of running my fingers through it when she's had a stressful day. We spent the rest of the morning talking about which traits Renesmee had inherited and whom she had inherited them from. I was so happy just looking at my baby with Edward. The first never wanted to move. Soon she started to stir and she finally woke up. She didn't cry like she had last night, she just sat there looking at us. I had every intention to pick her up and coo to her about how cute she was. Of course a certain little pixie wouldn't let me have my way. Alice busted through the door saying, "Okay Bella and Edward, you two have been extremely selfish this morning. Don't you think everyone else wants to fawn over the baby too? I have given you enough time alone with her as I can stand. Now move out of my way and let me see my niece." She didn't even wait for our reply. She just walked around us and picked Renesmee out of her crib. "Alice," Edward whined, "come on, just give us a little more time with our baby. She was just born yesterday, for Christ's sake." It was funny to see him whine to his sister like that. "Sorry Edward, but you two have had all morning with her. You need to learn how to share," and with that she walked out of the room with Renesmee. I stood there, a little in shock, and finally said, "We were just baby napped by Alice." "Yes we were, love," Edward agreed. "Come on, let's go get her before Alice has the chance to start a fashion show staring our daughter." Once the words were out of his mouth I darted to the door and ran downstairs. There I found that the family really was rather impatient to see Renesmee. They all surrounded her and were gushing about her. Seeing them all happy like that made it impossible to be mad at Alice for stealing my daughter. Which she probably knew was going to happen. She really was a tricky little pixie. "Good morning Bella," Esme told me as soon as she saw me. "Sorry about the whole Alice thing, but you know as well as we do that there's no stopping her when there's something that she wants," she offered me an apologetic smile. "It's okay Esme, I know everyone was excited about seeing Renesmee," I shrugged it off. "I think we should feed her soon. She hasn't eaten since she was born, I don't think," I continued. "I wonder what she'll want." "I think you're right Bella." Carlisle was officially in doctor mode. I had some baby formula brought here from the hospital, I guess we could try that out first, he offered. Well, I'm defiantly getting the feeling that she's hungry, Edward confirmed my suspicion. Then I'll be right back, Carlyle said as he went into the kitchen. When Carlyle came back with a bottle in his hand, Esme sat me down on the couch and gave me Renesmee, saying something about how I should be the one to feed her. Carlyle gave me the bottle, but Renesmee sniffed at the bottle and turned her face away. She wouldn't let the bottle come near her mouth. I was beginning to worry when she reached out to touch my arm. It was like seeing a memory. I could see it, but it was still transparent. I saw a bottle coming into view and the smell of it was horrible. The feeling of disgust came over me. Then a yearning for a different liquid was building up. I gasped when Renesmee took her hand away from me and everything went back to normal. What happened, Bella? Of course Carlyle would be the first one to ask. I think Renesmee showed me why she won't drink the formula. It smells gross and I think she wants blood instead, I told him, wondering if he would think I was mental. I think Bella's right, Edward defended me. I'm getting the feeling of impatience from her. Carlyle still looked a little awestruck, so I handed Renesmee to him and told her to show him what she showed me. Amazing, Carlyle said after Renesmee had showed him. This must be her gift. It's like she's flipped what you can do, Edward. Well, know that we know what's wrong. Will someone go and get her what she wants, please? I asked, since all this talking wasn't helping feed my daughter. Once I said that Emmett went to get Renesmee her desired liquid. When she came back I tried to feed her again, and this time she drank greedily from the little bottle. Soon she was finished and she put her hand on my arm again and she wanted more. Since there was no way Edward and I could ever deny our little girl anything she wanted, we gave her 2.5 bottles until she was full and content. The rest of the day was spent reveling the new little quirk of hers. And I'm not going into great detail since SM explains it in Breaking Dawn. When she finally fell asleep, Edward and I took her upstairs and put her in her crib before I finally got ready for bed and went to sleep myself. The next day was much like the first. Alice gave Edward and I time in the morning to be by ourselves with Renesmee, and then she came and took her downstairs so everyone could play with her. But everything wasn't picture perfect like I wish it could have been. I don't know why I thought that after Renesmee was born she would start growing at a normal human pace. Maybe I was hoping that I would have more time with her as baby. Well, all my hoping was done in vain. She was still growing at a faster rate than was normal. Carlyle decided to start monitoring her growth, so 4 times a day he measured her. I was starting to worry again. If her growth never started to decrease, she would only live for 15 years. There was no way I was going to be ready to say goodbye to my beautiful Renesmee in 15 years. I tried not to think about it often, but I slipped if I was left alone to my thoughts. But luckily I had other things to think about. My birthday was tomorrow and I had a feeling that the Cullens weren't just going to let it pass without recognition. But I kept my mouth shut in hopes that they would forget and the day wouldn't be about me. Like that was going to happen. I woke up on the morning of my birthday wondering how long I could pretend to sleep for. I know that you're awake, Bella. Apparently I couldn't get away with fake sleep at all. Come on, love, you know I'm not going to let you skip your birthday. Edward tried to get me to open my eyes. With a sigh I opened my eyes and turned to face him. Edward, please don't make a big deal about my birthday. There is honestly nothing I want. I've already been given the very best gift life could give me, I pleaded with him. Don't worry about anything, I promise there will be no big celebration. His eyes smoldered as he tried to reassure me. It was so unfair of him to look at me like that because he knew there was no way I could resist him when he did. There better not be, I said. Then I rolled out of bed and got ready for the day. I still can't believe that we were blessed with such a beautiful daughter, Edward whispered as I went to go stand by him. I know, I agreed. There was no doubt that, aside from Edward, Renesmee was the very best part of my life. Alice came into our room again that morning and took Renesmee like she had for the past 2 days. When I went downstairs there was no extravagant decorations like promised, but I was greeted with a loud chorus of, "Happy birthday, Bella," which caused me to blush. Even if there wasn't a party or anything special, the attention still bothered me. The day went by rather normally, which only made me more suspicious because there was no way the Cullens were letting my birthday go unnoticed. Just as I was finally beginning to believe that my wishes were going to be listened to, Alice stood up and said, "So Bella, it's time for us to give you your present." Oh come on, you don't really think we were going to let your birthday go by without us giving you anything? She asked when she saw the disbelief on my face. Oh, I guess not, I sighed, a little exasperated. Great, then come on and bring Renesmee with you, she said as she headed towards the garage. I complied without complaint because I just didn't have the energy to fight. Although I did throw Edward a couple of dirty looks. I sat in the back seat of the Volvo with Edward and Renesmee, and Alice drove with Jasper in the passenger seat. The others were following us. We drove out on the main drive until we suddenly turned onto another drive that I had never even noticed before. Alice, has this drive always been here? I asked. No, she said with a smug look on her face. I didn't think so, that little pixie was up to something. The new drive was long and serpent-like, just like the main one. After what seemed like an eternity, the car stopped and I looked out the window. There was a little 2-story cottage nestled in the woods. Bella Pav. I sat there speechless. This was by far the most amazing birthday present I had ever been given. To think I thought my life was perfect before. Well, what do you think, Bella? Alice asked me, her voice high and squeaky with excitement. It took me a while to pry my eyes off of the cottage, but I did it eventually. I stared at Alice with huge eyes and finally chalked out, "You got me a house for my birthday." Well, technically it's for all of us, my love. Of course Edward would be the one to make it look like no money was spent on me alone. But yes, we did get you a house, Alice answered. We found it here one day while we were hunting and had always thought about renovating it but never got around to it. Then when you and Edward went on your honeymoon, we thought that you two might like to be on your own for a while, so we brought it back to its former glory. I was slightly aware of everyone else standing around me waiting for me to say something, but I was still too shocked to say anything coherent. So do you like it? Rosalie eventually asked me. I don't just like it, I love it. I mean, it's so perfect. It looks like it just grew out of the ground, like it really belongs here. I finally said. Oh, I'm so glad you love it, Bella. Now you and Edward can be a real family and live by yourselves with Renesmee, Esme said. How can I not love it? It's so perfect, thank you all so much. I thanked everyone. I could only imagine all of the hard work they all put in to bring the cottage back to life. Well, Edward already knows his way around, so I guess we'll leave you guys to get used to your new home, Carlisle said. Oh, and don't worry, your closest is already fully stocked, so call me if you can't match your clothes, Alice said as she threw me a doubtful look. Alice, leave them alone and let's go, Jasper stepped in to save me from another lecture on clothes from Alice. I gave Jasper a thankful look and watched everyone leave. Once everyone was gone, I turned to Edward, who was holding Renesmee. Did you know about this? I asked him. Of course I did, I helped Esme pick out the colors. If I hadn't, then our house would be white, black, and burnt orange, he told me. Emmett, I asked, knowing he would know I was referring to who had picked those colors. Confirming my suspicion, he said, who else? That boy took his football way too seriously. Come on, love, let's go get settled into our new house. We walked up to the house and I slowly took in the beauty of it. It was made of some type of cobblestone and the windows had thick wooden shingles on them. There was a small, perfect little garden that had honeysuckle climbing up the wall and late summer roses growing underneath the windows. When we got to the little arched doorway, Edward gave me a small key and held out his hand and let me do the honors. The inside was even more perfect than the outside was. I stood in the doorway and admired my new house. The floor was made of smooth, flat stones and there was a beehive-shaped fireplace in the corner. Of course it was already fully furnished and none of it matched exactly, but still went together perfectly. What do you think, my love? Edward asked me. I think Esme did a wonderful job redecorating this place, I said enthusiastically. Renesmee reached her hand out and placed it on my cheek. It seemed that she entirely approved of her new house too. We had already gotten used to her special gift, it was just part of who she was. It also really helped us to know what she wanted and when she wanted it. I was so glad Edward and I didn't have to guess for hours like some parents did. It really had the whole parenting thing easier. Edward set her down to let her explore the house on her own, which wouldn't be all that complicated anyway since she had almost doubled her size and looked months rather than days old. He then bent down to gently pick me up and walk me across the threshold. Hey, what are you doing? I shouted. I'm nothing if not thorough, His response caused me to think of the last time he said those words, which in turn made me to blush. After laughing at my blush, he walked in and I really loved what I saw. We walked into a little sitting room and to the left there was a little hallway. Down that hallway there is a bathroom and a guest room with a walk-in closet, Edward told me just as I was about to ask. The sitting room led to a family room and I found that the fireplace was double-sided. We rounded a small corner and to the left there was stairs that led up and just beyond the stairs a beautiful kitchen waited. It wasn't over the top like the Cullens but it was bigger than any kitchen I had ever used. Oh my gosh, this is so perfect, I told Edward, and it really was. I couldn't believe that Esme had done all this in such a short amount of time. Edward chuckled and said, "Wait until you see upstairs." As we climbed the staircase, Edward pointed out 2 extra rooms to the left. The one farther from the stairs was Renesmee's. At the top of the stairs there was open space that could easily be turned into an office or a game room. Edward carried me into our room, which was just to the right of the stairs. It was beautiful. The floors were a light sandy color and the walls were that almost white blue that the sky was on a sunny day. What got my attention right away though was the bed. It was huge and white and had gossamer floating down it from the canopy. "Wow," was all that I could say. "Esme tried to bring back some of her island for us," Edward explained. "I can tell. It's absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change one thing about it." Edward walked us over to the bed and laid me down, then quickly climbed in next to me. We snuggled up with each other, my head on his chest and him stroking my head. I didn't want to move. Lying on the bed was like lying on a bed of feathers. "Love?" Edward asked me. "Yes." "How unwilling are you to move?" "Very." "Why?" "Well, I promised Alice I would show you the closet before you went to sleep, and because Renesmee is hungry and is wondering where we are." Oh my gosh, I completely forgot we left her downstairs. I quickly got up and ran downstairs, so much for being good parents. XXX. About a week had passed since Edward and I had moved into our new house and I loved every second of it. Just as Edward promised Alice, right after we fed Renesmee he showed me the closet and it was huge. It was at least the size of half the upstairs, maybe bigger. I had no idea how Alice got Esme to agree to making it so big, but then again, when there's something Alice wants there is no way to stop her from getting it. The worst part of tea was that more than 75% of it was all mine. There was no way I would wear all those clothes even if I would have eternity to do it. I also loved Renesmee's room. It was painted a lighter shade of pink on top and a darker shade on bottom with a strip of princess wallpaper separating the 2 shades of pink. Looking from the doorway, her iron crib was up against the far wall and a changing table on the right wall and a small shelf full of her favorite bedtime stories was on the left wall. A pink throw rug was in the center along with a few scattered toys. Her closet was smaller than mine but still huge to my standards. Pictures of Disney princesses covered her walls and she already had her favorites. Even though my life right now was practically perfect, still a few things bothered me. Jacob had still not returned, but I wasn't too worried about that. He would come back when he was ready and I would give him time to determine when that was. Renesmee was the main source of my concerns. A week after her birth she started talking. At first it was just mama or dada, but a few hours later she started saying complete sentences. She was only a week old and she had the skills of a toddler. Her mind was growing faster than her body, but that didn't mean she wasn't growing fast physically too. She had the appearance of a 6-month baby. Carlisle measured her 4 times a day and by his calculations her growth was slowing down, but it was still too fast to be considered normal. Edward and Carlisle searched night and day but they just couldn't find the answers that they needed. I worried for my darling daughter and her well-being. I didn't want to see her die, but right now it looked like she would die at the age of 15. It just wasn't fair that she would be taken away from me like that. Sometime my emotions got the better of me and I would cry. Edward would always hold me whenever this happened. He would stroke my hair and tell me that everything would be okay. I tried not to think about it and just spend every second I could with Renesmee. Today Edward and his brothers went hunting, and Alice and Rosalie were at our house. Carlisle and Esme were at their house enjoying the peace and quiet while it lasted. We were in the family room sitting on the big L-shaped couch just chatting while Renesmee took a nap in her room. I was glad that my friendship with Rosalie had stayed intact after Renesmee was born. I guess she finally approved of my choices. So Bella, how's married life treating you? Rosalie asked with a glint in her eyes that I didn't fully understand. It's good. I still can't believe that I'm married and have a daughter. Alice let out a small giggle and said, I don't think that's what she was talking about, Bella. Then what was she talking about? I think she was asking if the sex was good. I blushed so hard I was surprised that I didn't go dizzy from all the blood rushing to my face. Well, Rosalie asked a little impatiently. To be honest with you, we haven't had sex since I found out I was pregnant. What? Alice gasped in shock. Not even after she was born. No. Did they honestly think we would go right back at it? We've been busy with Renesmee and I've been tired. I mean, even if that wasn't the case, I don't think Edward wants to risk getting me pregnant again. He hadn't actually said this out loud, but I knew that this was the case and that I wouldn't be able to make him budge this time. I was really going to have to wait until I was a vampire. But I thought he was happy about Renesmee. Rose still didn't see the point. He is, but he doesn't want to put me through it again. Alice opened her mouth to ask me something else, but thankfully Renesmee's cry filled the room, so I ran upstairs to get her. Edward Pav, my brothers and I decided to go on a little hunting trip since it had been so long since we had some guy time. We had just finished and were resting before the next round when Emmett spoke up. So my brother, is sex with Bella everything you thought it would be? He didn't think about what he was going to say, so I was caught off guard and didn't know how to respond. That's none of your business. Look at him. I bet if he could blush right now he would. Jasper thought. Shut up, Jazz. He just laughed. Oh, come on, Eddie. It's all you would talk about before the honeymoon. And now you have a daughter, so it must have been good. Emmett was relentless. Okay, so it was very nice and it made me love her more than I already do. Oh come on, Eddie, you have to give us more than that. No, I'm sorry, but that's all you're getting out of me. Fine then. So how long did you two wait to start making love again? Actually, Emmett, we haven't had sex since we left the island. You said what now? What the hell are you waiting for? Emmett and Jasper's thought were practically in sync. Oh come on, you two didn't think I would still have sex with Bella while she's human, did you? They stared at me and nodded their heads. Even after I got her pregnant. I'm sorry, but I'm not touching her again until after she's been changed, and she knows that. Oh ho, I see trouble up ahead. What on earth are you talking about, Emmett? Well, you see, my brother, as men it is our job to keep the women happy, and you obviously aren't keeping Bella happy. It'll be so sad to see her walk away unsatisfied. That's absurd. We have a daughter, house, and life together. Of course she's happy. She wouldn't throw away our marriage just because we're not having sex. Whatever you say, bro, she wouldn't. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but she knows that I don't want to risk getting her pregnant again. She knows that she has to wait until she's been changed. Thank God this statement seemed to change the course of the conversation. So does Bella still want to be changed? I honestly doubt that she's changed her mind, but no one's talked about it. No, you're right, Jasper, she hasn't changed her mind. She's just waiting until Renesmee gets a little older so she understands why Bella might have to stay away for a little while. She doesn't want Renesmee to think that she's abandoning her. This was true. Bella and I had spent countless hours discussing when the perfect time would be for her to be changed. In the end, we had agreed that we should wait until our daughter was old enough to understand what was going on. Thankfully, that ended the conversation and we went back to hunting. I refused to think that Emmett was right and that Bella would leave me. She loved me and wouldn't throw away everything just because of something like lack of sex. On the other hand, I did miss being with her. I always felt so much closer to her after making love. There was no other feeling like it in the world. But it still wasn't worth the risk. At least that's what I was now trying to convince myself of. Bella Pav. When I came back downstairs, the girls didn't subject me to any more talk about my love life, for which I was grateful. By the time they left, it was 8 p.m. and Edward was supposed to be home soon. So I made myself a quick dinner, swept and mopped the floors, cleaned the bathrooms, and did the laundry. When I finished cleaning, it was 10:30 and Renesmee was passed out on the couch. She had tried to stay awake to see Daddy when she came home, but she was just too tired to stay up late. I picked her up and gently carried her upstairs to put her to bed. Then I took a quick shower and climbed into bed. I really wanted to grate Edward when he came home, but I was just too tired. It didn't take me long to fall asleep on the huge, white bed. XXX. It felt like I hadn't been asleep for a long time when I felt someone climb under the blankets and cool arms encircle my waist. Edward. I sighed and turned around so I was facing him and opened my eyes. There he was, my personal god. His eyes were a light gold after hunting and he had a small smile on his face. Even in the dark he took my breath away. Hello my love, I didn't mean to wake you, he whispered into the dark. It's okay. Renesmee and I tried to stay up to welcome you home but we both got too tired. Well, I'm glad that you two went to sleep. You don't have to wait up for me. He always worried about the smallest things. I rolled my eyes and said, well, since I'm up already, welcome home. I stretched my neck slightly to give him a chaste kiss on the lips. But he took me by surprise and instead of letting me return to my former position he tangled his fingers in my hair and secured my face to his. He rolled onto his back and pulled me on top of him. Even though this was clearly crossing all of our unspoken rules, I didn't try to stop him. It had been too long since he'd kissed me with this much passion. I let my hands tangle in his hair and started tugging on it. Edward groaned into my mouth and my body reacted in ways that had been foreign to me for a while. Edward let his tongue trace the pattern of my lips and it was my turn to moan. I let my tongue linger on his lips and I was graced with his amazing taste that I could never quite identify. It wasn't until Edward's hand were at the hem of my shirt that I realized where this was leading. Whoa, Edward, slow down, I nearly panted as I pulled away from him. What was that, love? He was still peppering kisses along my neck. Are you sure about this? I mean, we don't have to if you're not sure. I had to fight to keep coherent thoughts. We don't have to. Love, I want to. It's been so long and I've missed you. Now my skin was flushed and I could hardly breathe. I could tell that he wanted this and there was no doubt that I wanted it too. God knows how neglected I've felt this past week. But I didn't want him to just get carried away in a moment. I knew that he was scared about getting me pregnant again and I knew that he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he put me through that again. But if he was sure, then there was no way I was going to stop him. If you're sure, I said one last time. I'm positive, love, I want you and I want you now. Oh dear God, help me. Edward continued where he left off. Once my shirt was removed he rolled us over so he was on top. There was no going back now. We spent the rest of the night reminding each other how good we could make each other feel. Edward Pav. I have no idea what came over me when I got home, but as soon as I saw my sweet Bella sleeping so peacefully I knew that there was no way I could resist her. Not because I was afraid she would leave me but because I missed being close to her and making her feel good. When she kissed me I knew that I had to have her right then. I was willing to take the risk of getting her pregnant. And thankfully we spent the entire night making sweet love to each other. XXX. Bella Pav. It had been about a week since Edward got over his fears. Everything was the same as it always was. Renesmee grew way too fast but it was slowing down. Edward and Carlisle researched to find other children like her, and there was no signs of Jake. The only difference in my life was that Edward and I had sex every night. And I love it. But this morning I woke up and immediately ran to the bathroom and threw up. I wasn't too positive about when my period was supposed to be since I skipped it for 2 months while I was pregnant, but I was 95% sure that I was late. I was too scared to go to Edward since I wasn't sure what his reaction would be. So here I was at the nearest Walgreens looking for a pregnancy test. I wasn't sure what the difference was between them was, so I got 5 different ones just to be sure. I also bought a quart of Sunny D. I quickly went home in Edward's Volvo. He left to the main house with Renesmee to do more research with Carlisle. He left while I was still asleep, so for all he knew I was still in dreamland. As soon as I was in the door I opened the Sunny D and started to chug it. I waited a few minutes until I had to pee and went upstairs and took each of the pregnancy testes. The 3 minutes seemed like a lifetime, and when they were finally over I looked down and each of the tests said the same thing. Bella Pav. I just stood there trying to take it all in. Then I finally moved my hand to my stomach to find that it was pretty hard. I gently caressed the little bump that my baby was growing inside of. I was pregnant again and I didn't know how to tell Edward. Maybe Alice already told him. Maybe I blurred out of her sight like I did last time and he guessed what the cause was. Bella, I'm home, love, Edward called from what seemed to be the kitchen. His voice made me jump a foot into the air and squeak. There was no way I could let Edward see the positive pregnancy tests, assuming he didn't already know, of course. "I'm in the bathroom, I'll be right down," I called back down to him as I quickly threw the tests into the trash and covered them with toilet paper. I then ran out of the bathroom and put on my black cotton jacket so I could be sure that Edward's vampire sight couldn't see my small baby bump. I ran down the stairs and into the kitchen. "Hey there, what are you doing home?" I asked him. "I wanted to see if you were up yet. You had a long night." He had a glint in his eyes that made my knees go weak. "I guess you're right. All that late night activity made me really tired. But now I'm awake and I'm hungry." I pulled myself up onto the island and sat there. "Get cooking, housewife. Housewife. I come home to check on the love of my life and this is what I get." "Yup," I told him with a playful smirk. Then my stomach made a very loud rumbling sound that caused me to blush. "Well, I guess I should start cooking," he said when my stomach finished talking. As he was cooking, I asked him where Renesmee was. "She's at the house with Rosalie. I figured you wouldn't mind if I left them alone." "You're right, I'm fine with that. I know how much she loves her Aunt Rose." And she did. Renesmee absolutely adored Rosalie, so I was always okay with it when they wanted to spend a little aunt-niece time together. We didn't talk again until I had finished eating because I really was very hungry. I guess a side effect of the pregnancy. There was no way I could keep it from him for long, and it really wouldn't help my baby or me. I was just going to have to suck it up and just tell him. "Wow, you really were hungry, huh?" Edward's eyes were huge after watching me eat a meal that was large enough for 3. Yup, of course I wouldn't have been as hungry if someone had let me finish my dinner last night before getting a bad case of the grabby hands. Sometimes it was shocking to see and hear the things Edward did and said when we were alone because I was so used to his normal gentleman behavior. "Sorry, love, but I was hungry for something else." But I couldn't deny that naughty Edward was a turn on. I got up from my chair, with a deep blush on my face, and went to go wash the newly dirtied dishes. As I walked past him, Edward slapped my ass, defiantly a turn on. I turned around and said, "Now listen here, mister, I must protect your virtue. I am a lady and you will treat me with respect at all times." He laughed at the mock authority in my voice. I smiled as I made my way to the sink. I was almost done and thinking about how to tell him about the baby when I felt his arms twine around my waist and his chin rest on my shoulder. "What's on your mind, Mrs. Cullen?" He breathed into my ear. What do you mean?" "You just look deep in thought. You can tell me anything you know." "I know that, and you're right, I am thinking about something serious and I have to tell you about it. I just don't know how." With a sigh, I pulled away from him and made my way to the stairs. "Just tell me, love. You don't have to be afraid to share your news with me," he said as he followed me into our room. "Oh, yes, I do. Okay, well, something happened. Something that I think we might have anticipated but ignored anyway." "What's wrong, love? Are you okay?" Of course he would be worried that something was wrong with me. "Yes, I'm fine. But Edward, I'm pregnant." I finally choked the words out. Edward paused. "Yes, I'm fine. But Edward, I'm pregnant." It looked like Bella was waiting for someone to yell at her. My first reaction was relief. For a wild moment I thought she had been referring to the wolves and was trying to tell me that they were coming to ruin my happiness. My second reaction was self-hatred and stress. Bella was going to have to go through a painful pregnancy again. I had known that it was a possibility, but I ignored it and had sex with Bella anyway. My third reaction has happiness. I knew there was no way she would give up the baby. And to be honest, I didn't want her to. I was ready to be there for her, unlike her first pregnancy. Edward, are you okay? Do you need me to call Carlisle?" My poor Bella looked so worried, and the stress really wasn't good for her right now. "Yes, love, I'm fine. Just a little shocked, but I'm sure you can understand that." She nodded her head vigorously but still looked troubled. I guess my long silence when she told me didn't help her to think that I wouldn't push her to have an abortion. With a sigh, I went to stand behind her at vampire speed and started to rub her shoulders. "You need to calm down, love. All this stress can't be good for the baby," I said as I moved back and sat us down on our bed. We sat there in silence for a while until she turned around with a sad look on her face. "Edward, you don't have to pretend to be happy about this." I was shocked that she thought I was pretending to care. I know I reacted badly the first time, but was I honestly that bad? Then I remembered wanting to knock her out with drugs and trying to convince Jacob Black to make her have a baby with him, and concluded that I was very bad. So I would have to try and convince her otherwise. I'm not pretending, love. I think that this time I can be there for you. Her eyes widened with shock and her jaw dropped slightly. Are you sure? When I nodded, she asked, why the sudden change of heart? Well, now we know more about human pregnancies, so you won't be as sick. We know what to expect while you're giving birth, and we know what the baby is most likely to be like after birth. We know so much more than we did the first time, so now I know that there really isn't a need to be as afraid as I was the first time. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there for you like a husband should be, but I'm ready for that this time. Maybe this time you'll get the little baby boy that you wanted. By now her eyes were glistening with unshed tears, and she threw her arms around my neck and started to cry into my shoulder. Shish, love, it's okay. You don't have to cry. Shish, everything's going to be okay. I'm sorry, it's just that what happens when the wolves find out. They let Renesmee pass B, but I don't know if they will this time. I was angered by the thought of the wolves interfering, and that she thought my family and me would simply stand by and let the wolves kill her and our unborn child. Don't worry about the wolves, love. They won't get by me, I promise. I all but growled. When she nodded, I wiped away her tears and said, now please calm down, love. All of this stress that you're putting on yourself really isn't healthy for our baby. She nodded one more time before turning around and relaxing herself against my chest. I was rubbing her shoulders again when she asked, so you're really happy about this baby? How many times was I going to have to reassure her that I couldn't be happier about our new little baby? Of course I am, love. I'm ready to be a daddy again. Oh, Edward, I'm so glad you're not mad about this. I know you are, love. So should we go back and tell everyone the news? Yeah, we probably should. We still have to pick up Renesmee anyway, although I'm sure Rose didn't mind looking after her for the afternoon. Bella slowly sat up off of me and turned around and reached for my hand. I took it and led her downstairs to my car and helped her in. As we were driving down the path, I started to wonder what Bella's stomach might feel like, so I reached my hand over the console and placed it firmly on her almost non-existent bump. Her bump almost felt rock solid, and when I pressed on it I could defiantly feel what seemed to be a growing child. I was so shocked that I almost didn't realize that Bella had put her hand over mine, holding it to her stomach. I looked over at her to see that she was wearing one of the biggest smiles I had ever seen. Look, love, feel this, I said as I moved my hand out from under her and placed her hand over where our child was and pressed down. Do you feel that? Yes. What is it? It's our child. She had this look of awe on her face, and silent tears were rolling down her face. She started rubbing small circles on her bump when her hand froze suddenly. She looked so happy when she grabbed my hand and put it on her bump again. Before I could ask her what she was doing, I felt a small little thump, like someone kicking. Now I knew what she wanted me to feel. Our baby was already kicking. As much as I was happy about his, worry started to creep on me again. The baby was already developing fast, and I needed to get Bella to Carlisle fast. Thank God we were at the house by now. I turned off my car before racing around to the other side and opening Bella's door. I leaned down to kiss her bump before unbuckling her seatbelt and helping her out. Once she was out of the car, I took her hand and led her to the house. She had the ghost of a smile gracing her lips, and I couldn't help but smile in return. Hello, Edward and Bella. What are you two up to this morning? Esme greeted us as we walked into the living room. Hello, Esme. Bella and I have something we need to tell the family, I told her. Okay, I'll just go and get Carlisle. Everyone else is in the backyard watching Emmett and Jasper wrestle. Once Esme had gone upstairs and we were walking outside, Bella spoke up. I'm not sure how I feel about the boys always wrestling in front of Renesmee. Don't worry about it, love. The boys know not to get too violent in front of her. She looked at me skeptically, so I continued. Plus I'm sure she finds it very entertaining. We rounded the corner just in time to see Emmett throw Jasper into a huge hemlock tree. Not too violent, huh? Bella asked. Trust me, love, this is clean. I was right about one thing though. Renesmee was enjoying herself immensely. Rosalie was holding her and she was clapping and laughing as she watched her uncles acting like children rather than the old men they really were. Emmett, Jasper, can you two stop fighting for 5 minutes so Edward and I can tell you something? Bella asked rather impatiently. Either the hormones were kicking in already or she was really opposed to them wrestling in front of our daughter. Is Bella going to say what I think she is? Because right now I can't see anything, and since the wolves aren't here I can only think of one explanation. Alice's thoughts were dead on track. Bella had blurred out of sight again and she was expecting that Bella was pregnant again. I gave her a slight nod and she sighed before smiling slightly. All right, we're stopping now, don't go all crazy, Emmett said as he and Jasper finally stood up straight and walked over to us. Bella went over to Rosalie and took Renesmee. Were you a good girl for Aunt Rosalie? She didn't give you any trouble, did she? Of course she didn't, she was a perfect little angel, Rosalie replied. So Bells, what's the news? Jasper asked. Actually Jazz, we were going to go back inside so we could tell the entire family at once, I said for Bella since she was still cooing to Renesmee. We all walked back into the house and went into the dining room to find Carlisle and Esme already there. Once everyone was seated I looked at Bella and she nodded. Okay, everyone, so as you already know Bella and I have something very important to tell all of you. Yeah bro, you've got that covered already, so why don't you stop with all the suspense and just tell us already, Emmett said. He could be so impatient sometimes. Okay, I'll get on with it. So when I went home today to check on Bella she told me that she was pregnant, I blurted out. Oh my god, I told him to get it on, not to get her pregnant. Oh my, another baby. Well here we thought this house would never have children in it and now it'll have two. Let the headaches start, although I guess they're worth it for Bella. Wow, just wow, I hope Bella can handle this pregnancy too. Whoa wait, I dealt with the first pregnancy but another one. No. It's not fair that she gets 2 babies and I can't have any at all. On the other hand, this is Bella and Edward and there is no one else who I would rather see with a baby besides myself. I can't believe it still hurts after all this time to not be able to have a child. Wow, wait, are they sure? I need to examine Bella right away to be sure. I hope this time it'll be easier on everyone. Edward sure does seem happy about it. Maybe there will be more hope and happiness this time. This family truly was blessed when Bella came into our lives. The family all had different thoughts on the pregnancy. Bella, are you sure that you're pregnant? Carlisle voiced his question. I'm positive. I was throwing up this morning and I was late so I took 5 pregnancy tests and they all read positive, she said. Wait, 5 tests? How on earth did she have enough urine for 5 tests at once? You took 5 pregnancy tests all at once. How? I asked her. I drank my weight in Sunny D, she told me like it was the most normal thing in the world, spite the light pink on her cheeks. I nodded my head even though I was still a little shocked. Well Bella, it seems I am going to have to examine you as soon as possible, Carlisle told her. She was about to reply when Alice gasped. I saw it in her mind at the time that she did. Jacob Black was coming to our house and then nothing. Bella paused. I was about to reply to Carlisle when I heard Alice gasp and Edward tensed by my side. Renesmee, who was sitting on my lap, reached up to my face and asked what was wrong. I don't know, Renesmee. I turned to Edward. What's wrong? Alice had a vision and Jacob Black was on his way here and she can't see anything after that. I'm starting to pick up his thoughts now. He all but growled. It took my mind a few minuets for my mind to take it all in. Jacob was on his way here, while my baby was here and I was pregnant with another one of Edward's children. This was not going to go well. No, I don't want him near Renesmee right now, I yelled as I started shaking. I wasn't sure if Jake would hurt her or not, but there was no way I wanted to take any chances. Shish, love, it's okay, he doesn't even have to see her. Rosalie, will you please take Renesmee to my room and stay there with her? Everyone else, let's go to the living room, Edward sighed. Everyone moved to do as he said. I gave Renesmee a kiss on the cheek before I handed her off to Rosalie. Don't worry Bella, I'll take care of her. I won't let that dog anywhere near her, Rose tried to reassure me. I nodded weakly as I stood up and followed Edward into the living room and sat on one of the couches. I snuggled up into Edward's side and tried to hide my stomach even though I knew you couldn't really see the bump. I was starting to panic. What was Jake coming over for? Was he finally ready to be my friend again, or was he here to see if Renesmee was a danger to people for the pack? Well, if he was here for the pack, then there was no way I was letting him anywhere near my daughter. I didn't need him in my life if he wasn't going to be the friend that I needed and once loved. Edward suddenly stiffened and a low growl came from his chest. Jacob was here. JPOV. Why the hell was I here anyway? She would be a vampire by now and she would be blood crazy. Well, maybe I was suicidal. I had stayed away for 2 weeks because I knew that there was no way I could see her as a vampire, but I needed to know if she was okay and under control. The yearning to be near Bella had gone away shortly after I left the leeches house. I was free to drown in my misery, but I had had enough of that. It was time to see what the hell those damn bloodsuckers had done to her. I walked up the steps to the house slowly and determinedly. After a moment's hesitation I knocked on the door. Not even a second had passed when Dr. Vamp opened the door. "Hello Jacob, what brings you here?" he asked. "Is Bella here?" He seemed a little hesitant to answer, but before I could ask again a low voice came from inside the house. "I'm right here Jacob." It was Bella. I looked past Dr. Vamp and saw Bella on the couch with Edward, still human. "Bella, is that really you?" There was no way that she was still human after giving birth to the monster, unless the vampires were wrong and she hadn't given birth yet. That would explain the lack of baby monster in the house. I couldn't be sure though. It was hard to see her stomach from the angle she was sitting at. "Yes Jake, it's really me." "What I mean, how you're still human?" "Yes, I'm still human. Everything is fine Jake. There's really no reason for you to be so tense." It was then that I realized the worried look on her face and her bloodsucker husband rubbing her arm soothingly. I looked around the room and noticed that all of the other Cullens had a worried and slightly concerned face. And even more strange was that Blondie was missing. What the hell is going on here? I looked at Bella again and found that there was a dent between her brows and she was biting her bottom lip. "What's wrong Bella?" I asked her. "It's nothing Jake. Everything is fine." It sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than she was convincing me. "Don't lie to me Bella. Something's not right here and I want to know what it is." She looked to Edward and he gave her a slight nod and started to rub her arm again. She took a deep breath then looked back at me. "Jake, I'm pregnant." Well, I had already figured as much, so why was she acting like it would set me off? "Okay, so, I mean it must suck being 2 weeks late, but why all the secrecy?" "Jake, I don't mean I'm still pregnant, I meant I am pregnant." "As in I'm pregnant again?" I saw pure red. So she had had the baby after all and it hadn't killed her. Then she went and let the damn leech touch her again and he got her pregnant. How the hell could you let this happen again? I gave up everything I had ever cared about because I thought that you would be responsible and take care of her, but no, you went and got yourself some as soon as you could. I should have never left her with you. I shouted to him from my mind. "Jacob, I know that you're upset, but please know that Bella and I did not plan this." He tried to calm me. "I don't care if it was planned or not, you still did it. Jake, please don't be mad about this. I'm happy. Heck, Edward's even happy this time. It won't be the same this time. We know more this time. It'll be safer," Bella said as she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Bella, how on earth could you want to go through all of that again? Have you gone crazy?" "Jake, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but this is the way things are and we can't change them." Now she was shaking and tears were streaming down her face. I hated making her cry, but there was no way I was going to be able to see her go through hell again. What I was most shocked to find though was that Edward was actually happy about this. I wanted him to suffer the way I would suffer, but that wouldn't happen if her wanted the thing to be born. I looked back at Bella and Edward when I had calmed down some. Edward was now rubbing Bella's shoulders and telling her to calm down. That's when I couldn't take it anymore. I just simply had to get out of there. I had to go back to Sam's pack in La Push. I can't be here anymore. I have to go back to La Push to tell Sam and his pack. "No," Bella shouted as she jumped up. "No Jacob, please, you can't just tell them, please. Bella, I have to warn my brothers. You can't expect me to just not tell anyone. Plus they'll know as soon as I turn into a wolf anyway, so it's better that I tell them instead of looking like I'm trying to keep this from them," I explained to her with a cold voice and a look of hatred on my face. Edward stood behind Bella and tried to pull her back down to the couch. "Please, love, try and calm yourself down. Your body can't handle all of this stress right now. Bella sat down and took a few shaky deep breaths before looking back at me. Please Jake, there really is no need to warn the pack. Renesmee is perfectly safe and she never tries to hurt anyone. Who the hell is Renesmee? I asked. She's our baby girl. You know, the one who was born 2 weeks ago. Was it really possible for the monster spawn to be harmless? I doubted it. That thing had never been exposed to any humans besides Bella, so who knew if it was really safe or not? I would need to see the thing myself to see if it was safe or not. At that moment Edward stiffened and I looked him in the eye. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to inspect that thing you call a daughter. And I'll be damned if I leave here without seeing it. Over my pile of ashes. There is no way you are going anywhere near her, the leech said. Bella was looking in between us with a worried look. What's going on? Who does he want to see, Edward? He wants to see Renesmee. No, absolutely never going to happen, Jacob. Bella was on her feet again, shaking. But I couldn't be the best friend she needed because I loved her and I had a duty to the pack. I had to be strong and cruel. I don't want you anywhere near my daughter. Bella, I have to do this for the pack. I don't care who you're doing it for, it's not going to happen. Yes it will, Bella, you're only human, and you can't stop me. I won't have to stop you. Don't you dare threaten me with your bloodsuckers. All the while Edward was trying to get Bella to calm down, saying some crap about this not being good for the baby. It's not a threat if you plan on following through with it. I couldn't believe this. She really planned on letting those leeches have a go at me if I tried to get near her daughter. I was about to yell at her for being a bad friend when she clutched her stomach and let out an ear-piercing scream as the fresh scent of blood filled the room. Bella Pav. My worst dream had come true. Jacob wanted to check my daughter for the pack. There was no way I was letting that happen and I told him so. We fought as Edward tried to calm me down. I should have listened to him. There was a stabbing pain coming from my wound that almost felt like a contraction, but it wasn't exactly the same. As I screamed I felt blood stream down my thighs. I didn't need anyone to tell me what was wrong because I already knew what was happening. I was losing my baby. Bella, love, are you okay? Edward asked as he turned my shoulders and made me look at him. Edward, I'm bleeding really badly, I cried. Edward looked down, then his eyes went wide and he looked at Carlisle. I think she's having a miscarriage. I think you're right, Edward. Quick, let's take her to the hospital. We should be able to sneak her in without anyone noticing, Carlisle said in full doctor mode. As Edward rushed me out of the house I saw Jasper standing in the corner of the room with his eyes closed and his body stiff. Emmett was standing in front of him ready to restrain him if necessary. In the midst of the pain I found the energy to send Emmett an apologetic smile. He shrugged his shoulders at it and said, "Don't worry about it, Bella, just make sure you're okay." Edward picked me up bridal style and carried me to his car at vampire speed. I was surprised when he opened the back door, climbed in and put me on his lap. I looked to the front to see that Carlisle was already driving at 120 miles per hour to the Forks Hospital. "It's okay, Bella. I won't let anything happen to you, my love," Edward kept saying over and over again. It wasn't until then that I noticed I was shaking and tears were rolling down my face. I tried to calm myself down for Edward's sake, but it was hard to not think about losing my baby with the blood still slowly rolling down my legs. Thankfully we got to the hospital in less than 5 minutes and I was rushed into an empty room with all the things that Carlisle would need. "Okay, Bella, I'm going to need you to take off your pants and spread your legs the way you did when you were giving birth," Carlisle told me. Edward helped me to do what Carlisle asked, then he took my hand in his own. "Okay, now I'm just going to check you for the signs of pregnancy that you showed the last time, which means I'll have to take a blood sample too." After Carlisle checked me down there he grabbed a needle and took a blood sample. I cried the entire time and Edward held my hand and murmured soothing words to me. "I lost the baby, didn't I?" I asked Edward after Carlisle left to the lab to get my results. One of the perks of being a doctor, you don't have to wait weeks on end to get lab results. "We don't know anything for sure, love. Please don't lie to me right now, Edward." He sighed and said, "Yes, you most likely did lose the baby." I nodded my head, then silent tears rolled down my cheeks. "Shush, love, don't cry. Please don't cry anymore. I promise you everything will be fine." Edward pulled me into his arms and I cried into his shoulder. By this time Carlyle had come back into the room with my results in his hand. What did they say, Carlyle? Just tell me, don't try and downplay it for my sake, I told him. Well, Bella, you were, in fact, pregnant. Were? I asked. Yes, were. You did lose the baby. I nodded, already knowing that I had. He gave me a few moments to accept this, then went on. You see, when you stress out, your brain lets out a chemical that can be harmful to the fetus and damage it. It took me a few moments to get words out, and when I did, they came out a little slurred. So you're saying that I lost my baby because I was too stressed out? Yes, your body had more CRH in the bloodstream than it could handle, and it caused your miscarriage. I closed my eyes and shook my head a few times as the tears still streamed down my cheeks. Stress made me lose my baby. The one thing Edward told me not to do. I had just stressed myself out with the whole Jacob thing when I should have just relaxed. Love, please look at me, Edward sighed. I slowly opened my eyes to look at him. What? Please don't blame yourself for this. But it is my fault, Edward. I should have just relaxed like you told me to. Love, if this is anyone's fault, then it's that dog's for making you stress out. I shook my head. Don't blame Jacob for this. Then don't blame yourself for this. I sighed, then nodded my head. He tightened his arms around me, then Carlyle spoke up again. Miscarriages usually don't happen this suddenly, but I think the vampire genes caused it to skip the first stage. You lost a lot of blood, so I will have to give you a transfusion. Bella, you will have some bleeding for about 2 weeks. After I nodded, he continued, and it will not be safe for you and Edward to have sex until the bleeding has stopped completely, okay? I blushed red but nodded nonetheless. After Carlyle told me everything else to expect after having a miscarriage, gave me the transfusion, and I had my pants back on, we left back to the main house. When we got there, Jacob was sitting on one of the couches with Rosalie sending death glares at him. Edward growled when he saw him, and I lightly smacked him on the chest. Edward stopped and sent me an apologetic look. Sorry, love, I couldn't help myself. I shook my head in understanding. So what happened? Rosalie asked. It turns out that I stressed myself out too much and I lost the baby. I said in a quiet voice. You damn dog, Rosalie yelled at the same time. Jacob said, Bells, I am so sorry. Both of you be quiet, this isn't anyone's fault, understood? I asked in a monotone voice. They both nodded their heads, but Rosalie sent Jake one more death glare. Rose, where's Renesmee? I asked. Esme is upstairs with her in Edward's room. Don't worry, we haven't let the dog anywhere near her. I nodded my head, then went upstairs. The first thing I saw when I opened Edward's door were Esme's sorrow-filled eyes. I'm so sorry you have to go through this, Bella, she said. I shocked my head but said nothing and just opened my arms for my daughter, who was sleeping at the moment. Esme put Renesmee in my arms and followed me downstairs. Are you ready to go, Edward? I asked when we were back in the living room. Almost. Love, I was just going to research something with Carlyle, but I can leave with you right now if you want. No, it's okay, I'll just meet you at home. Are you sure? Yes, Edward. Okay, then I'll see you at home, love. He walked over to me and gave me a kiss on the forehead and handed me the car keys. I drove home, then carried Renesmee to her room and put her in her crib. I ate a quick dinner and then took a real good shower since it wasn't good to take baths. When I got out, I put on a pad since it wasn't safe to use tampons, then went into the bedroom to find Edward sitting on our bed. How are you feeling, love? He asked. I feel fine. My back just hurts a little, but Carlyle had said that this would be normal for a few days. He nodded, then patted the bed next to him. I went to go sit by him and he automatically wrapped his arms around me. Love, what's really going through your head right now? Nothing. I'm fine, really. Bella, how do you expect me not to lie to you when you lie to me? How do you expect me to feel, Edward? I just lost a baby. My baby. By now tears were starting to form in my eyes. I lost a baby today too, love. I felt horrible. I hadn't thought once about how Edward would feel about losing this baby. He had seemed so happy about it too. I started to sob. I'm so sorry, Edward. I didn't even think about how you would be feeling. Shish, it's okay, love. I just want you to know that you're not alone in this. I know I'm not, Edward. I'm sorry for crying like this. It's okay, love. I know it hurts. Just let it all out. I'll be right here with you the whole time. I spent the rest of the night crying into Edward's chest. Bella Pav. The next morning I woke up wrapped in Edward's strong arms facing away from him, and a surprising sunlight was shining through our window. It only took me a few moments to remember yesterday's events and for tears to cloud my eyes and spill down my cheeks. Then I felt smooth fingertips wipe my tears away. How are you feeling this morning, love? I feel the same way I did last night, except my back doesn't hurt as much, I told him honestly. I'm glad your back feels better. After a short pause he said, do you need me to get you anything? I thought for a moment, then my cheeks burned and I debated sending him out or just getting them myself. Well, I actually do need something, but I can go get it myself, I finally decided. No need to make him uncomfortable at the checkout line. I can get it for you, love, you know I don't mind doing things for you. I turned my head and looked up into his eyes, and they were so sincere that I just blushed even more. What on earth could you need to make you so embarrassed? He asked. Well, you know how Carlisle said that it wasn't safe to use tampons until my next period. I started. When he nodded I continued, well, all I really use are tampons, so I don't really have any pads left. By now my cheeks were burning red and I couldn't look him in the eye. Oh, well, that's all right my love, I don't mind running to the store to get those for you. Are you sure, Edward? I don't mind going out. I'm sure, love, I don't want you to have to worry about anything right now. All right if you're sure. I'm sure, he said before pausing and looking a little embarrassed for the first time throughout this conversation. So is there any particular brand that you prefer? I blushed yet again before saying, the green always infinity. Why green? He asked. My face got a few shades redder before I sighed and said, the different colors represent different sizes, Edward. Oh, I see my love, he said, but he sounded a little distracted. I slowly sat up and turned to face Edward and I ran my hands up and down his chest. What are you thinking about, Edward? I asked. Nothing much, Edward the first warned. He sighed, then sat up, wrapped his arms around me, and pulled me against his chest. I'm actually wondering where that dog is. Edward the first thought we agreed not to blame Jacob for this. I know we did, my love, but can you really expect me to forgive him for causing you unneeded stress? And the way he was thinking. All he could think about was, and I quote, inspecting the thing you call a daughter. A few tears escaped my eyes as I thought of Jacob. I knew that he would be spiteful towards Renesmee and he wouldn't see her as my baby, or even as a person, and that was why I didn't want him anywhere near her. I had always forgiven him for choosing the pack over our friendship since he didn't really have a say in the matter, but this was just downright wrong. I didn't want to hate Jacob for this, but the more I thought about it the harder it was to get over. I finally found my voice and tried my best to stick to my decision. Yes, it was wrong of him to act the way he did, but he is still my friend, and you know that he was just shocked and hurt when he found out that I was pregnant again. I knew you would forgive him without a second thought, he sighed sadly. I pulled out of his embrace, then turned around and took his face in my hands. It's not without a second thought. I know it's going to be hard to forgive him and that it would make more sense to stay away from him for a while, but he's still my friend no matter what. That's the way things have always been between us. For a long time now we have been the last shreds of humanity that we've had, so I can't blame him for feeling hurt when I'm leaving him behind. Love, you can't let the guilt you feel keep you from moving forward with your family. It's not your fault that you've found your happy ending. He just has to be patient and wait for his. I couldn't believe that Edward was actually right. I had felt compelled to be a friend for Jake since he had been there for me when I needed him the most. But we had helped each other to the best of our abilities, and now it was time for us to live our lives. It didn't mean that we couldn't be friends, but it did mean that I didn't have to feel bad about living my new life with Edward and Renesmee. Oh my God, Edward, I think you're right, I breathed. Of course I'm right, love, he said quite smugly. Now, let me go get your things, then I'll be back before you can even notice that I'm gone. All right, I'll see you soon. You know you really don't have to go. I really wouldn't mind going if you don't feel comfortable going, I told him one last time. For the last time, love, I don't mind going. Now you just stay here and relax. All right, I'll see you soon. He gave me a kiss on the cheek after getting out of bed and said, I love you. I love you too. And with that he left, leaving me alone to my thoughts. Luckily I wasn't able to get too deep in my thoughts of Jacob since Renesmee woke up crying about 2 minutes after Edward left. I swear she always knew when he was gone. She was turning into such a daddy's girl. I got up slowly, wincing at the pain in my back, and went into her room, turning on the light. "Ah, it's okay, Renesmee. Don't cry. Daddy will be right back. He just went to go get mommy something," I said to her as I gently bounced her in my arms and walked downstairs. Once she had stopped crying, I sat her in her high chair. I grabbed a banana, peeled it, cut it, then put it on a plate in front of Renesmee. Renesmee sniffed it, then turned her head up at it. "Renesmee, you need to eat, don't just look at it," I said in my motherly voice that I had inherited soon after she was born. I took a piece of banana, then held it up to her mouth, but she just turned her head in the opposite direction. "Renesmee." Since I was out of arm's reach, she spoke out loud in her baby soprano voice, "Mama, I want my bottle." "Then you have to eat real food first if you want blood. But it's not as good." She continued to whine. "Stop whining. Now if you eat half of the food, then I'll give you your bottle, but if you don't, then you'll have to go hunting with Daddy," I bargained. Renesmee didn't like animal blood as much as she liked the donated blood she was used to. We were trying to get her to switch, seeing as it was still human blood, but she didn't see it as wrong since no one died for it. Although she did have amazing self-control because she had only bitten me once, and that was purely out of curiosity since I didn't smell the same as the Cullens. She had barely even broken the skin before Edward pulled her away to see if the venom had spread. We were all very shocked to find that she wasn't venomous at all. Ever since then she kept her teeth to herself, understanding why she was allowed to bite people. She thought for a moment, then she picked up one of the pieces of fruit, then she stuffed it in her mouth before swallowing quickly. I rolled my eyes at her, then put a piece into my own mouth and eating it at a normal pace. I went to go fix her bottle before I looked through the medicine cabinet and took a Midol for the pain in my back. I looked back at my daughter to see that she had already eaten half of the plate and went to go give her her bottle. "Thank you, Mama. You're welcome, sweetie." Then I fixed myself breakfast and sat down next to Renesmee to eat. After I had finished eating, she was flailing her arms around trying to touch me since she really didn't have much patience with words. I leaned over and allowed her to put her hand on my arms. She had this huge yearning to go to the main house. "Does my baby want to go see her family?" I cooed to her as I took her to her room to dress her in one of her many cute outfits. After she was dressed and her hair was fixed, I carried her to my room and sat down in the middle of the bed and went into the closet to get ready. I wasn't in the mood to get all primed up Alice style, so I threw on some designer sweats that Alice thought were necessary to buy since my old sweats were horrendous. I wrote a quick note to Edward explaining where we were and left it on our bed. I picked up Renesmee and carried her out to the garage, and after getting her situated in my missile-proof Mercedes, Edward had been able to keep my before car for a little while longer until I was changed. We set out to the main house. Edward Pav. I couldn't believe that Bella was so embarrassed this morning when she clearly needed these things, girly as they were. I drove out to Port Angeles since it wouldn't be smart to let anyone from Forks see that we were back. Plus the sun was still shining there, whereas it was overcast in Port Angeles. I soon found a little stop and shop and quickly went inside in search for the famine aisle. Razors, shaving cream, deodorant, shampoo, body wash. Ooh, I think Bella might like that. No focus, Edward. Alright, let's see. Oh, here we are. Famine protection. Okay, no tampons. Let's see. Kotex, Playtex, Stay Free, Tampax. Ah, here we are. Always Infinity. I grabbed one of the green boxes, then went to the checkout line. I did receive a few lustful glances from the girl in front of me, but then she saw my wedding band and my purchase. Look at him. They don't make them like that anymore. I wonder if he's single. Well, let's see what he's buying. Whoa, wait, pads. And he's wearing a wedding ring. Damn it. I wonder if he's happy in his marriage. I quickly skipped out of her mind because she was making me angry and nauseous real fast. I turned around and saw a man that seemed to be in his mid-20s with a small cart full of tampons, razors, shaving cream, and baby formula. "Did your wife send you out too?" I asked him. He looked up at me with real tired eyes and said, "Yeah, although I don't really mind. I mean, I love my daughter and all, but all that crying was driving me insane." In his mind I could see a little baby girl that cried for an hour straight and a tired-looking woman who I assumed to be his wife. Daniel is lucky I love her and Denise, because any other man would have left them when the mood swings started, he thought. I felt for him. Parenting was tough enough without having to deal with the crazy, hormonal woman. I laughed and said, I know what you mean. My wife just gave birth to our daughter too. She's been exhausted lately, so I offered to run her errands for her. No kidding, look at us, we must be two of the most whipped husbands ever. Most men would rather die than buy famine things for their wives. We both laughed at that. Then I stepped up to pay. The checkout guy gave me a sympathetic look. Poor dude, I know I hate buying pads for my wife. What was with guys and not wanting to do things to make their wives' lives easier? I shook my head and grabbed the bag. Well, it was good talking to you, man, I said to the new father as I left the store. You too, good luck with your wife and baby, let God have mercy on you. I hope that guy's wife goes easy on him with the hormonal stuff, he seems like a good guy. Defiantly whipped but good nonetheless. I laughed because he looked so serious and his thoughts were highly amusing too. You too. I was still chuckling as I got into my car and drove home. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed that Bella's car was gone. I almost took the door off the car as I rushed into our house. Bella, I called as I ran into our bedroom and I saw a note on the bed. I was almost scared to pick it up, but I told myself that there was no way Bella would ever leave me. Edward, Renesmee felt like going to see your parents, so I decided to take her. Sorry if we scared you. I love you, Bella. I breathed a sigh of relief and felt guilty for even thinking that the recent events would make her want to leave me. I went back out to my car and drove to the main house. As soon as I got there, I was attacked with thoughts, most of them telling me to hurry up and get in the house, but the two loudest ones got my attention. Oh my God, I can't believe it's her. I've waited forever and now I've found her. I like him, he looks like a nice friend, well now he's mine. But what alarmed me the most was Bella's yell, no Jacob. Get away from her, Bella Pav. I kept looking in the review mirror, checking on Renesmee, and every time I looked I saw the same thing, Renesmee sitting there with a content smile. I don't know why, but I had this strange feeling that something was going to happen to her. Call it paranoia, but I thought of it more as a motherly instinct. I pulled into the front of the house, but something seemed off. The house looked the same and it was always quiet, but this time it was different. The silence was almost eerie, and for the first time the grand house looked like a vampire's mansion. Something's wrong here, I said mostly to myself as I pulled Renesmee out of her car seat and walked up to the house. As I got closer I could hear muffled voices. One of them was saying, "You really shouldn't be here, Bella just arrived and I doubt she'll want to see you so soon. You know I'm grateful for your helping my family and I would love to help you in return, but my family does come first. No Esme, I have this feeling that I need to be here. I need to stay here," said the last voice I wanted to hear at the moment. I ran up the steps and opened the front door. I was right, there he was sitting on one of the couches next to Esme. "Jacob, what the hell are you doing here?" I asked him, purposely keeping Renesmee turned away from him, not letting him see her face. "I'm so sorry, Bells," he said as he stood up, "I never meant for yesterday to happen." "Well, that's nice of you and all, Jacob, but you need to seriously get away from me." Now Renesmee was wriggling in my arms trying to turn around, but I held her steady. "Bells, who's that? I don't see how it's any of your concern. Is that your daughter? Jacob, get away from us now. She sure is something to look at, you should be proud." Renesmee was putting up a good fight now and she finally looked forward at Jacob. They were silent for a moment, just looking at each other with a smile on their faces. Then they both stretched their arms out towards each other, and Jacob looked at my daughter like he was a blind man who was seeing the sun for the first time. I knew right away that he had imprinted on my daughter. "No, Jacob, get away from her," I yelled as he stepped towards her. I heard the front door slam open and turned around to see Edward standing at the doorway with an enraged look on his face. JPOV. So call me crazy, but I went back to the bloodsucker's house because the yearning was back. Well, it wasn't telling me to go exactly to the big house, but the felling was close enough to it so I couldn't think of anywhere else it would be telling me to go. When I got there I decided to talk to the motherly bloodsucker about how to get back on Bella's good side. I really didn't mean to stress her out to the point that she lost her baby. I may not have approved of what was going on, but I wasn't heartless. I never meant to cause her so much pain, and I wished that she would just hear me out. I felt like I was losing my best friend. Yes, I was over her now just like she was over me. I just wanted her back in my life no matter how fleetingly. She told me just to give Bella some space, that she would talk to me when she could handle it. Then I felt the urge to just stay at the house and wait, so I refused to leave when Esme told me to go. I tried to apologize to Bella, but then I saw the little girl on her hip with her face turned away, so all I saw was her head of curly auburn hair. I figured that it must her daughter because I had only seen that color hair on her bloodsucker. It looked like she was struggling with Bella to turn around, and she finally won. Then I saw her, not just anyone but her, the one I wanted to make happy no matter what. I wanted to see her smile and make her laugh no matter what I had to do to get it done. She was beautiful and everything I wanted. I had finally imprinted. I looked into her beautiful, warm, brown eyes and held my arms out, and she did the same. I took a few steps towards her and I was barely aware of Bella yelling at me. Then I heard a loud crash and Edward was standing in the doorway. Next thing I knew, I was being catapulted backwards by two hands that were hard as stone. Edward Pav. I knew right away that Jacob Black had imprinted on Renesmee, my daughter. I saw red. I flew out of the car and, not even bothering to open the front door, ran into the house. I saw Jacob walking towards my daughter with outstretched arms while Bella was trying to get him away from Renesmee, and that's when I lost it. I dropped to my hunter's crouch and pounced at the dog. I had him pinned under me and I finally got to do what I'd been wanting to do for the past 5 or so months. I hit him in the nose, hard. He growled and threw himself up trying to pin me, but I was too fast and moved out of the way. He ended up running into the hole in the doorway I made. I ran outside after him and found him lying in the dirt, having tripped down the front steps. He saw me and stood up in a flash. He was beyond trembling now, and within the next half a second he had transformed. He let out a howl, then ran towards me and threw me into the air. I was able to land on my feet and threw him into a nearby tree. He stood up and ran towards me again with his teeth bared, and I pushed him back to the ground and stepped on one of his hind legs, effectively breaking it. He whimpered and tried to stand up. I bent down and I held down his 2 front legs in my vice-tight grip. "You have no idea how long I've waited to do that," I growled at him. All I got was a growl in response. I was caught off guard when he bent his head and bit my hand, almost succeeding in ripping it off. It wasn't until then that I was aware of the screams and cries pleading with me to stop. The only reason I was listening to them now was because there was a new voice in the crowd. "Daddy, please stop, don't hurt him. Please, he's my friend, I like him." My daughter didn't want me to fight anymore, and I'm sure my wife wasn't too happy about this either. "Jacob, stop right now, don't hurt him," Bella cried, voice breaking a couple of times. I looked down and saw that Jacob had freed one of his arms and was about to swipe his paw at my head with his claws extended. I blocked him easily and was about to show him how to decapitate someone when I felt 2 pairs of arms encircle me and try and pull me away. I looked up and saw the other 2 wolves trying to get Jacob away too. "I know you're not happy about this, but just know he didn't do it on purpose. We'll take him away for now to give you some time to cool off, but just know that we won't be able to keep him away forever." I nodded my head at Seth and finally gave in to Japper and Emmett and let them take me back into the house. Emmett was the first on to congratulate me. "I've got to give it to you, my brother. That was some kick-ass fight. I just wish that I had been able to give that dog a piece of my mind." "Shut up, Emmett. I wasn't in the mood for this," but of course he would just laugh and continue to think about the fight. I sighed and walked into the house to see Carlisle looking worried, Esme looking just as worried, Alice glaring daggers at me, Jasper not looking all that upset but went to stand with Alice anyway, Rosalie holding Renesmee and giving me an approving smile. Emmett of course agreed with Rose and was happy, and I finally found Bella with her back to me walking to Rose to take Renesmee back. When she finally turned around, her eyes found mine immediately. What I saw broke my heart. Her face was tear-stained and she was clearly worried. "Bella Pav." I went to go get Renesmee from Rosalie. When the fight started, Rosalie knew that I wasn't going to be able to stay away, so she took Renesmee for me so I wouldn't accidentally drop her in my panic. Plus neither of us wanted her anywhere near Jacob. I finally turned around and looked for Edward. When I found him, I didn't know if I was going to be able to look away again. His concern for me was written all over his face. I wasn't sure what I looked like, but I could still feel the dried tears on my face, so I tried to pull myself together, for his sake at least. I must not have been doing a good job of keeping myself together, because within the next second Edward was right there next to me, extending his arms to me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I handed Renesmee to her Aunt Alice, sat down on the closest couch, and cried. I felt cold arms around me, hugging me to someone. Oh Bella, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have never done that, but I just couldn't help myself, Edward told me gently. I calmed myself down a bit, then I scooted myself into Edward's lap and wrapped my arms around his neck in a chokehold. Don't you ever scare me like that again. Do you hear me? Never again, Edward Anthony, never again, I breathed into his ear. I won't, Bella, I promise. I'm sorry, I never wanted you to see that. God, Edward, what were you thinking? I wasn't, love. I just heard what Jacob was thinking and saw what happened, and I lost it, but I promise it will never happen again. I waited until my sobs were under control, then I looked him in the eye and asked, what are we going to do? He knew what I was talking about immediately. I don't know, Bella, I really don't. I thought for a while, then I realized something. I don't think we can keep them apart. What do you mean, love? Of course we can keep them away from each other. There is no way I'll let him anywhere near the house, let alone Renesmee. No, Edward, remember when I was pregnant and I wanted Jacob around all the time? When he nodded, I continued, well, when I gave birth to her the feeling went away. I think it was her from the beginning. They had to be close to each other even then. Look, I'm not saying that I like this, I hate it just as much as you. We also have to remember that Renesmee is a part of this, and we have to take into account what she wants. We don't have to like it, but if it's inevitable for them to be together, we might as well be civil about it. I really hate this, love, but you're right, I don't want my daughter to be unhappy. That's right, we're doing this for Renesmee and no one else. Alice, can you bring Renesmee over here? She nodded and said, I think you guys are right, this really sucks, but if they're meant to be together. When Alice handed me Renesmee, I put her in my lap and Edward put his arms around both of us. Then I asked, Renesmee honey, how do you feel about that man that was here this afternoon? She put her hand on my arm and I saw her thoughts clear as day. Jacob was hers and she was his. Even though she didn't know him, she still wanted him as a friend. I would be a horrible mother if I tried to keep her away from him. The groan that escaped Edward told me he was thinking the same thing. It's just not fair. He already made me lose one of my kids and now he's taking my daughter away. Now I was close to tears again. I know it's fair, love, but we have to do what's best for our daughter and keep her happy. She's our first priority, she comes first. Who are you trying to convince, bro? Emmett asked. I sighed and said, not right now, Emmett, please. You know I'm just messing with you guys. I think you guys are doing the right thing though. Although I wouldn't mind taking the dog out. Emmett, Esme warned. And we still haven't discussed what you did, Edward. It was really wrong of you to attack Jacob the way you did. You know he only came over here to figure out how to apologize to you and Bella. I'm sorry, Mom, I just lost control and once I started it was hard to stop. Nonetheless, you should apologize as soon as possible. You've got to be kidding me. After everything he's done, you want me to say sorry? There is no way that's happening. Not after everything he's done to my wife. Then Carlyle started on him. Look, Edward, Esme is right. What you did was wrong and you need to take responsibility of your actions. He groaned and closed his eyes but said nothing else. Rosalie finally spoke up. Well, if I were you two, I wouldn't let the dog anywhere near my child. Trust me, Rose, I don't want him anywhere near her, but there is no way I can deny my daughter anything, Edward sighed. What do you think, Jasper? I asked him, curious as to what was running through his head. I think it's solely up to you and Edward as to what you do with Renesmee. I nodded my head, then turned to Alice. Alice, do you see Jacob coming back anytime soon? She closed her eyes, then looked at me with a sad smile. Well, guessing from the fact that I can't see anything anymore, I think he just decided to come, but it might take him some time considering his leg is still healing. At that, Edward had a huge smile on his face. I rolled my eyes. So we just sat there talking amongst ourselves, waiting for him to arrive. Are we really going to do this? I asked Edward. It's what Renesmee wants and I don't think I could live with myself if I was the reason she was unhappy. I know what you mean, I was thinking the same thing. A few seconds later a low growl came from Edward's chest and I knew that Jacob was close. Sure enough, not 5 minutes later Jacob was trying to get through the hole where the door used to be. From the corner of my eye I could see Esme shaking her head as she looked at the damage. "Sorry Mom, I promise to fix that soon," Edward told her. "I'm not the one you should be apologizing to," and with that she turned her attention to Jacob. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. It's going to take more than that to do me in, bloodsucker." Edward pushed me and Renesmee off his lap and stood up. "Really Mutt? Because the way I remember it I was winning before we were stopped." "Well, why don't we go again, because I promise you this time you won't come out unharmed." "Fine then. I had had enough. Stop. Both of you just cut it out." "And Edward the first believe Esme asked you to do something." "Bella," he whined. "Just do it and get it over with already, remember it's for Esme." He growled then muttered, "I give you my apologies dog." Jacob just snorted and looked for Renesmee. When he found her he stood very still then started to slowly limp towards her. "Just hold it right there, Jacob," I warned, "we need to talk and you need to take care of your leg." He rolled his eyes but I called for Carlyle anyway. When he was situated on the couch with Carlyle fitting a brace on him I began what was either going to be a huge fight or a quick talk. I was hopping on the ladder. "So Jacob, Edward and I have thought about what happened between you and Renesmee. Well, just know that you can't keep us apart. We were meant to be together and nothing will keep us apart," he all yelled at me. "But Edward wouldn't have that. Watch the way you talk to my wife, dog. We don't have to let you see our daughter if we don't want you to." This was getting ugly fast so I stepped back in before they could start yelling, "But we did realize what you said was true so we are going to allow you and Renesmee to be together. We want her to be happy and if you're going to be able to be the friend that she needs right now." I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to get the words out. "Wait, are you too serious?" Jacob asked. I nodded my head and he continued, "Wow, and here I was ready to get down on my hands and knees to beg." Edward snorted then spoke with fatherly authority, "We do have rules though. We know that you two are friends to each other right now but Bella and I would still feel more comfortable if you were never alone. I'm guessing you can guess why, and if you can't then let me just tell you that it was nothing to do with imprinting. Also we will get to choose when you can spend time with each other and when and if you can hold her." Carlyle had put Jacob's leg in a brace by now and was up in his study. "Christ, what are you two so afraid of? It's not like I'm going to hurt her." His whining was getting on my nerves. "That's our final offer Jacob, take it or leave it." Half of me hoped he wouldn't accept our terms. All my hoping was useless. "Fine, I guess you have to do what you have to do as parents." XXX. This was going to be hard. 30 minutes later and Renesmee was sitting on Jacob's lap with her hand on his cheek. She was telling him about herself. Every now and then he would let out a little chuckle. I could feel Edward tense besides me. Everyone else was out hunting, leaving us alone with Jacob. This was beyond cruel. The more I watched Jacob with my daughter the more I hated him. It wasn't fair that he had this special connection with my daughter that I would never have. When she was feeling down her first thought would be to go to Jacob and not to me or her father. When she had a secret to tell she would go to Jacob. When she was hurt she would go to Jacob. She would always go to Jacob. It wasn't fair. I was her mother. I was pregnant with her. I gave birth to her, yet she would go to Jacob. No, it would break my heart for her to do that. There was no way I would be able to live with this like I thought I could. Not when Jacob was practically stealing my baby away. She was mine and no one else's. I was glad when she fell asleep because I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. Edward could probably feel my unease because he gave me a look that made me think he was feeling just as useless as I was. I got up and walked towards Jacob. "We should probably take her home now." "You guys don't live here?" he asked as I took her out of his arms. It looked like he wanted to object but didn't. Smart man. "No, the family built us a house not too far from here." "Well, anyway, I guess I'll see you later, Jake." Edward stood up and followed me out. I had a feeling Jake was going to insist on seeing Renesmee again tomorrow, so I wanted to get out ASAP. "I'll meet you at home," I told Edward as I strapped Renesmee into her car seat. "Okay, my love." My mind was blank as I drove home, walked inside, put Renesmee to bed, and ate dinner. I was tired of thinking. My brain was on overload. It wasn't until I was taking a shower that I noticed what I was doing. I quickly finished my shower and got dressed for bed. I walked into our room and saw Edward look worriedly at me. "Are you okay, my love?" I sighed, then walked over to him and cuddled into his side. "I just feel like I'm losing my baby. I mean, she's always going to go to Jacob when she should be going to us. I know how you feel." I was thinking the same thing as I watched them together this afternoon. I've waited over 100 years for a family, and I finally have a daughter, and Jacob Black of all people is taking her away from me. I started to cry and he hushed me, trying to soothe me. For the second night in a row I cried myself to sleep. At least I know that Edward will be right here next to me through all of this and will help me sort out my confusing feelings for Jacob Black. Bella Pav. This morning I woke up to find that my head was resting on Edward's chest and his arms were encircling me. He knew that I was awake, and I was glad that he just let me lay there in peaceful silence for a while as he stroked my hair. Eventually I sighed and sat up and rubbed my eyes, trying to wake up. I felt Edward sit up behind me. I turned around to see him leaning against the headboard. He gave me a sad smile and patted the space between his legs. I quickly settled between his legs and leaned back against his chest. He softly kissed my shoulder before saying, "Good morning, my love. Are you feeling any better?" "Concerning Jacob or the miscarriage?" "Both." "Well, I have really bad cramps and my back is aching, so I'm guessing that's from the miscarriage, and I'm still getting used to the idea of Renesmee always going to Jacob. She's my baby. How am I supposed to just give her up?" I was starting to get hysterical again, so he hushed me and started to rub my shoulders. "I know, love, I know. It's going to be hard to let her go. But that's just it. We shouldn't have to give her up. I know we shouldn't have to, love, but I thought about it as you slept, and the more I thought I realized that we can't stop this. No matter what we do, she's always going to feel something for Jacob, and while she might go to him for the things we wish she would come to us for, it doesn't mean that she doesn't love us. She's found her soulmate, her true other half. And think about it, love, just because we're not too fond of Jacob right now, it doesn't mean he's a bad person. You of all people should know how good of a person he is. He just wants for Renesmee to be happy. Wow, Edward, when did you become the sensible one? I thought you would hate this more than I do." He laughed lightly. "Oh, don't worry, I still hate his guts, but as parents we have to be reasonable. I mean, Charlie absolutely hated me but still let you see and marry me. That's not the same thing. Isn't it, love? When you really think about it, Charlie really did hand you off to me. He didn't have to, but he did because he saw how happy you were and he learned to live with it. And if anything, we should be grateful that she's meant to be with Jacob instead of some kind of Mike Newton Jr. This sucks." I pouted, quite childishly I might add. I could feel his chest vibrating, trying to contain his laughter. "Yes it does, love, but when life gives you lemons." I know, you make lemonade." I sat there and thought as he continued to rub my shoulders. "Do you think this'll ever get easier?" "I hope so, my love, for our sake and our daughters," he sighed. "Speaking of Renesmee, have you and Carlisle found anything useful in your researching yet?" "No, we haven't found much. That's why Carlisle wants to talk to the family about taking a trip soon." "A trip?" I asked, a little wary now. "A trip to where?" "To Brazil. I'll let Carlisle explain the rest when we go over today." "Brazil? Are you sure this is to the benefit our daughter and it's not just a weekend getaway? Or a shopping spree as far as Alice is concerned? I promise you that this trip will solely be about Renesmee." I could practically hear the smile in his voice. We sat there in silence, yet again, and I tried to figure out what on earth could be in Brazil that could possibly help my daughter. I was about to give up and suggest that we leave to the main house right away when Renesmee's voice rang out, calling us. "Mama, Daddy, come on, let's go get our daughter," I sighed as I got off his chest. We walked into Renesmee's room to find her sitting upright in her crib. When she saw us, she stretched her arms and started opening and closing her hands, making little fists. "Hi, my little princess, how are you this morning?" Edward crooned to Renesmee as he went to go pick her up out of her crib. She put her hand against Edward's neck, then he looked at me. "She needs her bottle," I guessed. He smiled and nodded as he followed me out of her room and downstairs into the kitchen. I fixed her bottle and Edward sat her in her high chair and played with her. I have no idea what they were doing, but whatever it was made them both laugh simultaneously. I turned around and Edward looked at me with pure love in his eyes and said, "Thank you." After Renesmee was born, Edward started to tell me, "Thank you," at the most random times, and when I asked him why, he just told me that he was thanking me for giving him a wonderful daughter. "You know you don't have to thank me, I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat." I smiled as I gave Renesmee her bottle and sat down on Edward's lap. He wrapped his arms around my waist and whispered, "I know you would, love, that's why I don't deserve you." I rolled my eyes and placed my head on his shoulder and watched my daughter eat her breakfast. A few minutes later my stomach growled loudly, demanding attention. I felt my face heat up as Edward laughed. "Breakfast time for the human." He chuckled. "Yes please," I managed to squeak out. I got up off his lap and watched him as he made me a very elaborate breakfast. The whole kitchen smelled like pancakes, egg, and bacon. Edward set the plate of breakfast food in front of me. At the same time, Renesmee reached out to me and told me that she was still hungry. "Well then you can share my breakfast with me, your daddy made way too much," I told her. She scrunched up her nose and looked at Edward with pleading eyes. "Oh no you don't, Renesmee. Your daddy sides with me. Right, Edward?" I asked, turning my head to him with one eyebrow raised. He looked at me, then at Renesmee, then back at me with a pleading expression. "Oh come on Bella, she's still young, she'll have time to grow out of this later. Edward, she's going to have to give up donated blood sometime, so it might as well be now. Look, if she doesn't want the human food then you'll just have to take her hunting later," I explained, then turned back around to Renesmee. "So which do you want? Human food or hunting with daddy?" She thought for a moment, then looked at Edward. He chuckled lightly, then said, "She says she'll go hunting with me. Will you be okay by yourself this afternoon?" "Of course I will. You know it's been a while since I've had some time to myself," I teased. He laughed with me for a while, then I started eating my breakfast. To my surprise I was able to finish all of it. I must have been hungrier than I thought. When I was done eating I loaded and started the dishwasher. I was not in the mood to wash them by hand. I searched through the medicine cabinet until I found the box of Midol and took two. The cramps were becoming unbearable. I went into the living room to find Renesmee sitting on Edward's lap watching TV. I went to snuggle into Edward's side when I saw what they were watching. "What on earth do you two think you're watching?" I asked as they both laughed at the human being chased by the monster. Nothing my love, I just sat on the remote." Edward quickly pressed the recall button on the remote and the channel changed to some annoying kid show. "Oh whatever, you know Renesmee can't stand those shows." He sighed and said, "I know, but Renesmee saw that movie and you know I can't resist her anything." "You are so weak." I shook my head. "Yes I am. Now why don't you go get ready to go to my parents' house while I get Renesmee dressed?" "All right, but no more horror movies." "Understood." I made sure they were in front of me as we walked up the stairs, and I went to our room while Edward went to Renesmee's. I walked into the huge closest and put on a pair of blue jeans, a light pink blouse and a pair of flats. That should be enough to keep Alice off my back for the day. I brushed my hair, then walked over to my baby's room. It seemed that Edward was having a hard time putting Renesmee's hair in a bow. I tried to rein in my laughter, but the sight was just too funny. "Don't laugh at me, love. This is harder than it looks," he said. "Sure it is, baby, sure it is. Why don't you go get dressed and I'll see if I can do better than you." "All right, but don't blame me, I don't understand the mechanics of fixing hair." He set down the bow and ponytail holder and went to our room. "My poor baby, what did daddy do to your hair?" I crossed the room and brushed Renesmee's hair. "Daddy was not born a girl, Mama," Renesmee told me with serious eyes. "No he wasn't," I agreed, then put her Bond's locks in a ponytail, then put a bow that matched her dress in the ponytail. I held up a mirror to her so she could see. "What do you think?" She touched my hand and I could see how much she loved what she saw. I went to her closet and picked out her Mary Janes and a pair of flats and held them up to her. Of course she chose the Mary Janes. With her ready and dressed I walked back to my room to find Edward coming out of the closet with jeans and a V-neck, knit shirt on. "Now how did you do that?" he asked, referring to Renesmee's hair. "All it took was a little patience," I gloated. He shook his head while he grumbled something about patience under his breath. I laughed lightly. "Come on, let's head over to your parents' house." We walked out to my car since it already had Renesmee's seat in it. As I was buckling up Renesmee, I noticed Edward had picked my keys out of my pocket and was starting to get into the driver's side. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" I questioned. "I'm getting ready to drive." The uncertainty in his voice made it sound like he was asking permission. "In my car. Please, love, you know how much I love the way this car drives. You're so lucky I love you," I sighed as I made my way to the passenger door. "I love you too, Bella." He paused for a second as he pulled out of the driveway, then said, "And Renesmee says she loves both of us." "Ah, I love you too, my baby," I said as I blew her a kiss through the rearview mirror. I smiled when I got a kiss in return. "And I love you too, princess," Edward sighed, not to be outdone. I rolled my eyes at him and looked out the window to find we were already at the Cullen mansion. Edward got out of the car and, at vampire speed, went to open my door for me and help me out. "Why, thank you, kind sir," I smiled. "Anytime, beautiful," he replied with all his 20th century charm. I blushed a little, then turned around to get Renesmee from the back seat. I hitched her on my hip and pulled her baby bag over my shoulder, then walked back to Edward. He wrapped his arm around my shoulders, then we walked up to the huge house. When we walked up to the huge hole in the entryway, I gave Edward a look. "What? I promised to fix it," he defended himself. I shook my head and walked into the house. "Hello, Bella, Edward, and Renesmee. How are you this morning?" Esme greeted us as we walked in. "We're fine, thank you, Esme," I responded as Carlyle walked into the room. "Bella," he chided, taking in me carrying Renesmee and her baby bag, "you really shouldn't be carrying heavy things. It's not healthy for you right now." "Oh, Carlyle, it really isn't all that heavy," but I sat down and took off the baby bag anyway. "Still, Bella, you don't want to put too much strain on your body right now." "Sorry, Carlyle, I promise to take it easy from now on." "It's okay, Bella. I don't blame you as much as I blame Edward for letting you carry it." His teasing smile let me know that he was kidding. It was pretty funny. Edward, the perfect gentleman, let me carry something semi-heavy when I really shouldn't, but normally he doesn't even let me open doors for myself. Well, I knew it would have been pointless to try and persuade her otherwise, so I didn't even bother, Edward defended himself. "I'm kidding, son," Carlyle grinned. "Why don't you three go into the dining room while I go round up the others? I'm guessing this family meeting will explain why we're going to Brazil." I asked Carlyle. "Yes, I promise to answer all of your questions once the family is gathered." I nodded, stood up, and adjusted Renesmee so I was holding her right. I was about to start walking when Edward held his hands out to me. With slight smile I handed him Renesmee and walked over to the big dinner table with Edward and Esme. We all took our seats, then Esme turned to me. "How are you, Bella? Are you having cramps or anything this morning?" "Well, I'm still dealing with the fact that I lost my baby." Edward found my hand under the table, took it in his own and gave it a gentle squeeze, "but it's getting easier. And as far as the side effects, I have horrible cramps and my back feels awful." "Have you taken anything for it yet?" "I took a couple of Midals at the house and it seems to be helping a little, but it still really hurts." She nodded in understanding, then took my free hand and said, "The loss of a child gets easier to deal with, but it never fully goes away. I think I'm starting to figure that out." "And how are you dealing with things, Edward?" This was something I was interested in hearing. I knew he was excited about having another baby, but I didn't know how he felt about losing it. I had tried not to think about it, therefore I never asked how he was feeling about things. I felt a little guilty about not talking to him about it, but it had been hard to think about, let alone talk about. "I've been better. I mean, I was ready to be a father again. I was ready to be there for Bella the way a husband should be there for his wife. We knew so much more about her case, so I knew there was no need to be completely freaked out like I was last time. I had hope." By the time he was done talking, I had tears in my eyes. This really was as hard for him as it was for me. "I promise both of you that it will get easier. But if you both really were ready to be parents again, why don't you try to have a baby once Carlyle says you can have sex again?" Esme said. My cheeks burned with embarrassment at her words and I couldn't even look at Edward. But before Edward or I could say anything, Carlyle came in with the rest of the family. Emmett and Jasper came in shoving each other playfully, which made me think that they had been in the middle of another wrestling match. Alice danced in and gave Edward an eye-knowing look, making me blush all over again. Rosalie saw me and gave me a sympathetic smile and took her seat quietly. So everyone, now that we're all here, we need to discuss something Edward and I found in our research. Carlyle started the meeting. He waited until he was sure he had everyone's full attention before he continued. You see, Edward and I have done all the research that we can from books, so now we feel it's time to follow the old legends to their source. Now Edward took the floor. One day while I was reading, I found an old legend from the Tucunas tribe in Brazil about children who were half human, half vampire. The book didn't tell me much other than the people of the tribe feared the children. So Carlyle and I thought that we should go to them, in Brazil, and ask them about the children, guessing that one was ever born and kept in the tribe. We know it's a long shot, but right now it's all we have. It took me a minute to absorb everything. There was a tribe in Brazil that knew about children like Renesmee. And there was a slight chance they could help us. I had to make myself not hope. There was a very slim chance that they could help us at all, and if I let myself hope and it came to nothing. Then another thought came to me, but how are you going to just walk into their tribe? Wouldn't they know that you're vampires? And how would we explain Renesmee? Edward put his arm around me and said, relax, love. Yes, they'll probably guess what we are, but we won't confirm their beliefs. And as for Renesmee, we won't tell them what she is, although I'm sure they'll be able to guess. So we're just going to go to their tribe and let them think what they want but never confirm anything. Don't you think that's a little risky? I couldn't help it, it's my nature to worry. It's a very fine line to walk, but we won't be giving anything away. That way we don't break any rules. I nodded my head slowly, still worrying. I didn't have too much time to think about things before Carlyle started talking again. So does anyone else have any questions? Everyone looked around and shook their heads. I think we understand everything, Carlyle. Now when do we leave? I want to try out some hunting moves on Brazilian animals. Emmett shouted as he got an evil glint in his eyes. Really, Emmett? This trip is to help your niece and all you can think about is hunting? Alice asked him, putting her hands on her hips. I swear, Emmett, sometimes I can't believe I fell in love with you, Rosalie agreed. Oh, whatever, you two. I laughed. I bet all you can think about is shopping in Brazil. I can hear it now. Oh, Bella, you have to come with us, the new winter line is out. Or, Bella, I don't want to hear it, we're buying this for you and you're going to wear it whether you want or not. Just admit it, Alice, you're a shopaholic. For your information, Bella, I don't talk like that. Neither Rosalie or I were thinking about shopping, and I am not a shopaholic, Alice pouted. It was Edward's turn to laugh now. Are you kidding me? Shopping was all that you two were thinking about. I'm surprised that you heard anything after, in Brazil. And yes, you do talk like that when Bella doesn't want to do things your way, and yes, Alice, you are most definitely a shopaholic. Alice pouted and crossed her arms in front of her chest. Jasper chuckled lightly before putting his arm around her and kissing the top of her head. Esme and Carlyle looked simply amused by the whole conversation. Well, to answer Emmett's question, we thought we should leave as soon as possible. In about 4 days, good for everyone? Carlyle asked. 4 days. I have to go start packing. Alice squeaked. Alice, you have 4 days, you don't sleep and you move faster than the speed of light. Why do you need to start packing now? I asked her, trying not to smile at her frantic expression. Because I won't just be packing for myself, I'm packing for everyone, and with that she sped out of the room and up the stairs. I don't know whether to be thankful or scared, I told Edward. He laughed at me, then said, well, with what I see in her head you should be scared. Oh great, this is just what I need, an unstable, cloth-loving, overexcited pixie. I heard that, Isabella, Alice called from somewhere upstairs. Everyone laughed at that. When the laughter died down, the phone in the kitchen rang and Esme went to go answer it. Jasper went to go help Alice start packing, Emmett chased Rosalie to their bedroom, and Carlyle left to his study, leaving Edward and I alone with our daughter. I turned around in my seat to face Edward and Renesmee, who was currently sitting in his lap. I stretched out my arms and Edward placed our daughter in my arms. I carried her close to my chest and bent down to kiss her on the forehead. She placed her hand on my cheek and told me how much she loved me and her father. I looked up at Edward, who had the same foolish grin plastered on his face that I'm sure I had on my face. I leaned back down to her and nuzzled my face into her neck and breathed, I love you too, my little Renesmee, so much. I promise your father and I will always make sure you know just how much you're loved. I had a feeling that Edward was about to tell her something similar to what I had just said when Esme walked back into the room holding the house phone in her hands. She looked at me and mouthed the words, "It's your father. He wants to talk to you." I looked at Edward and asked him, with my eyes, if it would be a good idea. He gave me a slight nod before Esme handed me the phone. I took a deep breath before trying to make my voice sound sick and then rasping out a weak, "Hello. Bella. It's been nearly 3 weeks since I last spoke to you. Esme said that you had gotten worse briefly." "Yeah, I did, Dad. But I'm getting better now. I'm practically the same way I was before my fever got worse." "Well then why haven't you called me? I've been worried sick here, waiting for someone to call and say that you were getting better." "Well, I was going to, but the doctors here have been really strict." He huffed. "When can I go see you, Bells? You're my little girl. I can't just sit here wondering if you're okay." "I know it's hard, Dad, but I really don't want you to have to see me like this. Plus I don't want to take the risk of getting you sick." "Are you sure you're okay there?" "Yes, Dad. I promise I'm fine. I'll try to call you more often now that I'm starting to get better." "You better, Bells." "I will. I love you, Dad." "I love you too, kiddo." I could almost hear the tears forming in his eyes. I handed the phone back to Esme and she walked out of the room assuring him everything was fine. I looked back at Edward to see a hint of sadness in his eyes. I merely shook my head at him. "Come on, love, let's get you back home so I can take Renesmee hunting," he said as he hitched Renesmee on his hip and pulled me out of the chair with his free hand. We walked back to our car. He picked up the baby bag in the living room on our way. I buckled Renesmee in the backseat and got in the passenger's side as Edward sped off towards our home. We're silent the whole ride, but once we got there Edward decided he'd had enough silence for one day. He took my hands in his own and bent his head down to look me in the eye. "What are you thinking about, love?" "Just how this trip came at a good time." "How so?" "Well, I won't really be lying to Charlie anymore when I tell him I can't talk or that I'm not in Forks, so that will make our conversations a little less strained." I felt guilty when I saw the sadness in his eyes. "You know I didn't mean it like that. Love." "No, don't start, Edward. You and Renesmee are my life now. I love you both too much to give up." "But are you sure, Bella? I hate that I'm taking you away from all the people that you love." "Did you not hear what I just said? You're not taking me away from anything. This is my new life and I don't regret anything, I promise. It's my choice to be here. If I thought that I was making a mistake, then I wouldn't have married you. But I did, and I can honestly say it was the best decision of my life. I know, my love. I just want to make sure that you're happy here." "Of course I'm happy here. I have you, my daughter, and a big dysfunctional family." He laughed lightly before letting go of my hands and walking to pick Renesmee up of the couch. "Well, I think we should be going now. We should only be a few hours. I'll keep close by." "Are you sure you'll be all right here by yourself?" "Yes, I'll be fine. You two have fun." Edward walked over to me and gave me a one-armed hug and chaste kiss on the lips. Then Renesmee gave me a tight hug around my neck and told me that she loved me. "I love you too, Renesmee." "I love you, Edward," I told them as I followed them to the front door. "I love you too, Bella. We'll be home soon and everyone else is still at the main house if you need anything. If you need me for anything, I'll have my cell phone with me, so don't hesitate to call. Please try not to fall down the stairs or something and hurt yourself." I laughed. "I'll try my best." Edward offered me a big smile and I smiled in return. I watched as they ran into the forest, then closed and locked the front door after they had disappeared in the green trees. I sighed to myself and walked upstairs to our master bathroom. I walked over to the tub and filled it with warm water. When it was almost full, I turned the water off and poured some vanilla bath salts into the water. I wasn't used to having the afternoon to myself and I was definitely going to take advantage of it. I got some sweats from my side of the closet and laid them next to the tub. I put my hair in a loose bun and held it together with big clips so it wouldn't get wet. Then I peeled my clothes off and got into the warm water. I sighed in relief and relaxed. For a while I just sat there and turned my mind off. I didn't think about my dad, the miscarriage, or even Jacob. Just as I was becoming relaxed, Esme suddenly popped into my head. Within seconds, her words before the family meeting consumed my every thought. I knew Edward said he was ready to be a father again, but that was because I got pregnant on accident. I knew there was no way he would ever put me through all that on purpose. I don't know if Esme really knew what she was saying when she proposed that idea. Did she really think that Edward, her son, would ever get me pregnant on purpose? I didn't even know if we were going to have sex again while I was human. Maybe the pregnancy reminded Edward of why we didn't have sex right after Renesmee was born. Maybe he decided to stick to his self-imposed rules this time. I sure hoped that he hadn't, but with Edward you never knew. We could always start using condoms or I could go on birth control, but for some reason I didn't want to. I would love to have another one of Edward's kids, but it was all up to Edward. That meant that I could almost definitely kiss that dream goodbye. I was pulled out of my thoughts when I heard a knock on the front door. Figuring it was Alice coming to pack my suitcase, I yelled, "Come in," knowing that she would hear me. But the pounding on the door only got louder. Then I remembered that I had locked the door when Edward and Renesmee left. I sighed and got out of the tub, not bothering to dry off, and pulled the plug to let the water drain. I grabbed my silk, pink and white robe, put it on and tied a loose knot around the waist as I made my way downstairs. I quickly started talking as I unlocked the door. "Alice, why didn't you just use your key?" I stopped talking when I realized that the person at my door wasn't Alice. It was Jacob. I stood there motionless until I realized that I was standing there dripping wet in a thin, white robe. I felt the heat rush up to my face and I was pretty sure I was beyond tomato red. Can you wait here for a second?" I stammered out in my embarrassment. When he nodded I continued, "Thanks, I'll only be a second." I guess you can come in and make yourself at home." He nodded one more time before walking in the entranceway. I closed the door and ran upstairs. Once I was dried and changed into sweats, I went back downstairs to find Jacob sitting on the very edge of the chaise. I cleared my throat to get his attention, then I sat down on the sectional. "So what brings you here, Jacob? How did you even find out where our house was?" He looked a little embarrassed when he said, Well actually I followed your bloodsucker's scent." I shook my head. "My bloodsucker has a name and I would appreciate it if you used it." I knew he was about to argue, so I quickly interrupted him. "You know I didn't even have to let you in. I could have easily called Edward or Emmett or anyone really and asked them to come and get you out of here." "You're right, Bells, and I'm sorry. You seem to be saying that a lot lately." "I know, but the only way to get me to stop saying it is to forgive me." I knew he was referring to the miscarriage, but in reality there was nothing forgive concerning that. I had never blamed him for it. Sure, it was hard to be around him, but I wasn't harboring any ill will against him. I wanted him to apologize for imprinting on my daughter, but I knew that he never would. It really wasn't his fault. Plus, it would make me a very bad person if I asked him to apologize for something like that. Suddenly I was wishing that I had never let him in the house. "Why are you here, Jacob?" I didn't need him to be here any longer than necessary. He shuffled his feet a little before answering my question. "Well, I wanted to see Nessie, but I guess she isn't here." "Nessie? Who the hell is Nes?" Then it dawned on me. Whoa, wait. You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster. How dare you? Well, that name you came up with is kind of long and hard to pronounce, so I thought that I should give her a nickname to make things easier. The way he said it sounded apologetic. I huffed and sat up straighter in my chair. "Well, yes, she's not here." "Well," he looked like he was expecting me to say more. "Well, what, Jacob? She's my daughter and I know where she's at. I don't see anything wrong." "Bella, come on. You promised to be open-minded about this. So will you please tell me where she's at?" I sighed. "She went hunting with Edward. They should be back soon." "Oh, I expected him to leave after that. So why did you think I was Alice?" "I thought that she came to pack my bags." I stopped myself before I said anything else. I wasn't sure if he should know or not. "Back your bags? Why? Where are you going?" I hesitated, but that only aggravated him. "Bella, you know I have a right to know. As much as you might hate it, I imprinted on your daughter and I want to know where she's going." The way he said that made me mad. He talked as if he owned her. I decided to humor him though. "Fine, all of us are going to Brazil in 4 days." I stood up and walked to the kitchen to make myself a late lunch. As I pulled things out of the fridge, I saw Jacob sitting down with his jaw hanging open slightly. Then he snapped out of it. You're going where? Brazil, I repeated nonchalantly as I made my sandwich. I looked up at Jake and made him one too. Why on earth are you going to Brazil? I set the food down on the table with a bag of chips and 2 sodas and sighed. Haven't you noticed how fast Renesmee grows? Even after she was born, her growth didn't slow down. It's been slowing down lately, but not by much. Yes, I've noticed it, but I guess I never really questioned it. What does that have to do with Brazil? He asked as he sat down and started eating. Well, there's this tribe in Brazil that have a legends about children like Renesmee, and we figured they could tell us when, and if she'll stop growing. What do you mean if? Well, if she continues to grow at this rate, then she'll die at the age of 15. He sucked in a sharp breath, then said, "Oh, and you think these guys in Brazil can answer your questions?" He didn't say it rudely, it was more like he was pleading. We can only hope. I'm trying not to hope so that way I won't be disappointed if nothing comes from it, but I can't help but hope. He nodded his head in understanding, and then something hit me. This is hard for you, isn't it? Of course it is, Bells. I know you don't want to believe this, but I really do care about her. I just want her to be safe. I mean, the thought of her dying is unbearable. I finished for him. Yeah, I finally understood what Edward was saying this morning. Jacob really was a good guy and life had been unfair to him. He didn't ask for any of this to happen to him, but it had, and he was just trying to make the best of it. We really were lucky that Jake actually cared and he wasn't some version of Mike Newton. This was still going to be hard, but knowing that our daughter had someone loving and caring made it just a tad easier. I was about to ask him if he was still hungry when Edward came bursting through the living room with Renesmee right behind him. What's he doing here? Edward asked with venom in his voice. Chill out, Edward, he just wanted to see Renesmee, but obviously she wasn't here. I see. How did he know where we lived? He followed your scent. Edward looked shocked to find this. Why my scent? Yours was the strongest and easiest to follow, Jacob answered. Edward nodded his head but still looked a little uneasy about having Jacob in our house. I just shrugged my shoulders and mouthed, "Humor me." Renesmee tried to look around Edward's legs, then sniffed the air. Then she ran around Edward and jumped right into Jacob's arms. It sent a pang through my heart to see her do that, but I tried to keep it in. Renesmee held up her hand to Jacob's cheek, and I assumed she was telling him about her day. Every now and then he would smile. I couldn't take looking at them anymore, so I went to the living room where Edward was holding his head in his hands. I sat down next to him and out my arms around him. It's not much easier to today, huh? No, it's not. It's not as painful, but it still hurts. I know what you mean. He shook his head, then unwrapped my arms from around him and pulled me into his lap. So what did you do with yourself today? I just took a really long bath and relaxed. Good. I'm glad you're getting your rest. I gave him a kiss on the cheek, then looked up as Jake and Renesmee walked into the living room and sat down across from us. They were both looking at each other and smiling. Well, I'm glad you had a good day, Nessie, Jacob said. That got Edward's attention immediately. Really? Nessie? That's the best nickname you could come up with. Hey, be lucky it wasn't something like Squirt or Munchkin, Jake defended himself. To my immense surprise, Edward let out a low chuckle and shook his head. Well, from what I get from your mind, we are indeed lucky that you settled with Nessie. It looked like Jacob was blushing, and that made me laugh out loud. We spent the rest of the night teasing each other and laughing at each other's expense. Jake was a great guy, and that made this whole thing a little bit easier to deal with. Today we were going to Brazil. Our flight left at 3 p.m. and Jasper had gotten us a private flight so we could leave Brazil whenever we needed to. We weren't too sure how long we would be in Brazil for, and none of us really felt like waiting for a commercial flight. We were currently driving to the SeaTac airport where our flight would be taking off from. We had originally planned on taking 2 cars, but Alice had packed at least 3 bags of luggage for each person, so each couple ended up having to take their own car. I was in the passenger seat and Edward was driving with Renesmee and Jacob in the back seat. I still couldn't believe that Jacob had ended up coming with us. The day after I told him that we were making this trip, he went over to the main house and had a talk with Carlisle about why he should be allowed to go. I, of course, threw a fit and said that he had no right to go. Then Jacob, knowing my weakness, made me feel guilty by saying that he only loved Nessie and wanted to make sure that everything was okay with her. After he told me that, I felt like a horrible mother, even though I knew that that was far from the truth. So after a very long talk with Edward, the first told him that if he was coming, then he had to respect that Edward and I were still her parents, and we made all the decisions regarding Renesmee once we found out what was going to happen to her as she grew up. Now here he was playing I Spy with my daughter in the back seat of the Volvo. Nessie wants to know if we're almost at the airport yet, Jacob told Edward and I. Her name is Renesmee, I told him. I still hadn't warmed up to the nickname yet. I really didn't like the fact that he gave my daughter the name of a monster. Unfortunately, the other members of the family were slowly starting to succumb to it. Edward, Rosalie, and I were the only sane ones left. Although I think the only reason why Rosalie didn't like the nickname was because Jacob came up with it. And we'll be at the airport in 30 minutes, Edward said in a semi-civil tone. He wasn't much happier than I was about Jacob weaseling his way into this trip. I gave him an apologetic smile and he took my hand, brought it to his mouth and kissed it before saying, "Don't worry about it, love. It's not your fault the dog doesn't know how to stay out of things that aren't his business." I giggled at that and ignored the "hey" from Jacob. The rest of the drive to the airport was silent and went by pretty fast. When we pulled up to parking places, Edward pulled into the lane that held the cars for extended stay and paid the toll. We drove into the parking garage and followed Carlisle and Esme up to the 5th floor and pulled into the space next to them. I got out of the Volvo and watched Alice and Jasper pull up, and then Rosalie and Emmett. Emmett, for some reason, looked a little annoyed as he grabbed the luggage from the trunk of Rosalie's BMW. "What's wrong, Emmett?" I asked as I pulled Renesmee out of her seat. "Nothing. I just think that we could have gotten here sooner if someone didn't drive like a grandpa," he replied while he sent a very pointed glance to Edward. "Hey, I don't drive like a grandpa. I just got stuck behind Carlisle and Bella wouldn't let me pass him up," Edward defended himself. "There was heavy traffic and you were both driving well over 100 miles an hour, I explained. "And our daughter was in the backseat too. I don't care how durable her skin seems, there is no way I'm going to test that theory. I swear sometimes I think I'm the only sane one around here." Emmett started laughing, but Carlisle defended me. "No, son, I think that Bella's right. And I wasn't driving slow, Edward, you're just too used to driving like a maniac, even for a vampire." "I do not drive like a maniac, Emmett does," Edward said. "No I don't, you and everyone else just drives like a pansy." "Okay, are we going to stand here fighting about who drives better, or are we going to go catch our flight?" Jasper asked, obviously annoyed by the argument. All the boys grumbled a little but went back to unloading the luggage nonetheless. I hitched Renesmee on my hip and tried to grab one of the duffel bags Alice packed for me, but Edward beat me to it. "Oh no you don't, love. You're not supposed to be carrying heavy things, remember? And there is no doubt that these bags are fully loaded. Seriously, Edward, I can't let you carry all of these, there's too many." "Love, are you forgetting that I'm a vampire? 6 bags is nothing." "That's what I'm saying, Edward. People will stare and start talking if they see one man carrying 6 suitcases by himself." He rolled his eyes at my antics. "Well, Jacob's here, and if you're going to carry Renesmee, then we might as well put his dog butt to work. Plus everyone else is here and I'm sure they wouldn't mind helping either." "Yeah, Bella, I don't mind carrying a extra bag or 2, Jacob added, ignoring the dog comment. I rolled my eyes at him because I knew he was just saying that because he still felt guilty for stressing me out. I looked around at everyone and they all nodded in agreement. I sighed. Well, since I really don't have any say in this, I guess that will be fine. We walked to the elevator with everyone carrying their luggage and Edward, Jacob, and Emmett all carrying one of my bags. The elevator ride would have been cramped if it was just the 10 of us, but with all of the luggage we ended up having to make 3 trips. I will forever curse the day I let Alice pack my bags. When we were all on the ground floor, we made our way outside into whatever light the overcast provided. After we walked into the airport, we followed Jasper to where we were supposed to check in for our flight. We walked up to the counter and right away the lady behind it perked up when she saw the Cullen men. "Hello and welcome to the SeaTac Airport. What can I help you with today?" she asked with an overly perky voice. It didn't escape my notice that she seemed to be only talking to the men. And judging from the looks Alice, Esme, and Rosalie were giving her, it didn't escape their notice either. Poor Edward, I could only imagine what thoughts he had to listen to coming from her. "We are here to check on our private flight to Brazil with our wives," Jasper answered, slightly emphasizing on the word wives. "With that said, the other girls and I put our arms around our husbands and made it pretty clear that they were ours." "Oh," she said, straightening up a bit as she looked at us for the first time. Then she looked at Jacob with a confused face. "He's the babysitter," Rosalie told her in a cold voice from her place snuggled up against Emmett's side. "Of course. What was the name your flight was under?" She wasn't looking at anyone now, instead all of her focus was on the computer in front of her. "Cullen," Jasper answered. "Ah, yes, here it is. Your flight is ready to leave when you are. In that case we would like to board as soon as possible." "Of course. Come right this way and your plane will leave as soon as your pilot is notified and ready." We followed her around a corner where we left our luggage with 3 attendants. After that we went out a door where we found ourselves out on the runway, and at the end of it our plane was waiting. After we got rid of the annoying lady we made our way towards the plane. "That chick was annoying," Alice said as we neared the stairs that lead up to the plane. "She was about to bet bitch slapped if she didn't stop looking at my man," Rosalie said. Jake chuckled at them and I looked at him. "What are you laughing at?" "She's not kidding. She really would have done it." That shut him up. "Seriously." "Why? I mean, it's not like she was flirting with him." "Well, she was checking him out, so she might as well been," Rosalie snapped. "You girls are all crazy." Jake shook his head. "Whatever, but as long as I'm here I'm not going to let anyone look at my hubby," Alice said as she cuddled closer to Jasper's chest. "Come on, baby, you know that I only have eyes for you," Jasper comforted her. "Yeah, plus it's not our fault that we Cullen men are so good looking," Emmett said as he puffed out his chest a little. By now we were starting to climb the stairs and Jake started laughing at Emmett's comment. "What are you laughing at, babysitter?" Edward asked. "I didn't see or hear her checking you out." We all laughed at that as we finally stepped into the plane. What I saw made me stop in my tracks. The plane was probably one of the most luxurious things I had ever seen. I was still getting used to being a Cullen and I always forgot that it meant always having the best of everything. To the left there were white leather chairs and sofas along the side of the windows and it had brown carpeting. To the right there was a brown, wooden, paneled table surrounded by more white leather chairs. Behind the table the mini bar was set up. To the right of the bar a door led to a bedroom with 2 queen-size beds and a full bathroom. Up against the far left wall an entertainment center was set up and a door was there that led to the cockpit. "Wow," I breathed out. Renesmee put her hand on my neck and told me that she agreed 100%. Edward wrapped his arms around me from behind and asked, "What do you think?" "I think that this is absolutely amazing. How did Jasper get this on such short notice again?" "Well, let's just say that he has some friends that know it would not be smart to get on his bad side." "I see, so what you're basically saying is that he used his power to make these friends fear him and get them to do whatever he wants." "Yes, that sounds about right." Edward laughed and I couldn't help but laugh right along with him. We walked over to the closest sofa and sank down in it and looked around to see what everyone else was doing. Emmett was checking out the entertainment center and Rosalie was sitting behind him, watching what he was doing, or maybe she was just looking at her reflection in the television. It was hard to tell with her sometimes. Alice and Esme were looking at the interior design and giving comments to each other on how to make it better. Carlisle had gone into the bedroom to see where our luggage was being put. Jasper had gone into the cockpit to see if our pilot was ready to take off yet. And Jake, well, the plane hadn't even taken off yet and he already had his head stuffed in the refrigerator. I snuggled into Edward's side so he put his arms around me and started to stroke my hair. I let out a content sigh and started to drift into a light sleep. It had been a really long morning and drive to Seattle. It made me really tired. Then Jasper came back with our pilot. "Everyone, this is Tony, our pilot," Jasper introduced him. "Hello and good morning to you all," Tony started. "I will be your pilot for your return trip as well. Our flight today should take around 9 hours and 50 minutes, so we should be landing in Brazil around 7 p.m. If there are any questions, feel free to ask." When no one said anything, he continued, "Okay then. Please sit down and put your seatbelts on, we will take off momentarily." He left back into the cockpit after that. I reluctantly leaned away from Edward to put my seatbelt on. Then I tuned back to Edward to see that he had moved down a space so that he was on my left and Renesmee was between us. I looked up to see everyone else already in their seats and Jacob walking to the seat to the right of me with a ton of food in his hands. I was giving him a disgusting look when he looked up to see me staring at him. "What?" he asked with an innocent look on his face, which was covered in mustard and a lot of other condiments. "Could you at least wait until we're in the air to stuff your face with food? I mean seriously, when are you not eating?" I replied with my disgust clear in my voice. "Hey, it was long morning and I didn't have a chance to eat breakfast." "Well, neither did I, but you don't see me stuffing food down faster than I can chew it. Only because you're too much of a girl to. You know you really want to deep down inside. Just admit that you really want to just shove this down your throat because you're starving," he said as he shoved something I think was supposed to be a sandwich in my face. After I regained control of my gag reflexes I said, "I'd rather not." Then I turned back to Edward who was looking at Jacob with the same disgusted look that I'm sure was on my face a few moments ago. "He eats like a dog," Edward said in a low voice. "That he does," I agreed as I turned away from him, unable to stomach his eating habits anymore. Then I could feel the plane moving down the runway and I leaned back against my seat and closed my eyes. I could handle flying, but the takeoff and landing always made me feel a little sick. I felt a cold hand on my arm. I opened my eyes to see that Edward was giving me a reassuring smile. I smiled back at him, then closed my eyes again as I felt the plane lift in the air. After the rocky takeoff was over and the pilot told us we could take off our seatbelts, I reopened my eyes and looked at Edward. He had already taken off his seatbelt and Renesmee was sitting in his lap messing with his collar. I would never get tired of watching Edward and Renesmee together. I took off my seatbelt and scooted over to Edward and wrapped my arms around him with my head resting in the crook of his neck. "What are you doing, baby?" I asked Renesmee. She out her hand on my arm and told me that she was just being silly. I smiled at her and leaned down to kiss her forehead. She pushed herself off of Edward's lap and walked across the plane to Rosalie and started to pull on her hair. I sighed in contentment and leaned further into Edward, who then put his arms around me. "I love you," he breathed, his cold breath fanning across my ear and neck making me shiver. "I love you too." Just then my stomach growled and I blushed as Edward smiled and got up to get me some food. A few minuets later he walked back to me with a normal-looking sandwich and a bottle of lemonade. "Thank you," I smiled. "No problem, my love." Edward handed me the food then sat back down next to me. "See, I knew you were hungry too," Jacob said through the food that was still overflowing his mouth. "Yes, but I eat like a person," I retorted. After that he shut up and I eat a late lunch. When I was done I leaned back against Edward, but as I moved my stomach cramped and I winced in pain. "Are you okay?" Edward asked me, noticing my discomfort. "Yes, I'm fine, I just have cramps again." He nodded and I moved to get up to go to the medicine cabinet. As I crossed the plane I saw Esme give me a sympathetic smile. I shrugged back at her and opened the small cabinet. I quickly found a bottle of Midol and took 2 of the small pills. I walked back to Edward and as soon as I sat down he wrapped his arms around me and pulled me against him. I relaxed against his side. We didn't say anything, we didn't have to. I could see his love for me by just looking up into his eyes. After a few minutes my eyes started to droop and my breathing evened out. The morning had tired me out more than I thought and the day wasn't even halfway over yet. I could vaguely feel Edward's cold arms around me as he picked me up and carried me to one of the beds and set me down under the covers. It felt like I had been sleeping for a while when I woke up. I let out a small groan as I stretched my back and that's when I felt the cool arm around my waist. I turned on my side to face my personal god. He smiled at me and moved a piece of my hair away from my face and tucked it behind my ear. "Well, hello there, sleeping beauty. How are you feeling now?" he asked me. "I'm feeling better now, the cramps have passed," I told him honestly. "Good, I'm glad you're feeling better." I yawned real big then asked him, "How long was I asleep for?" "Well, it would be 8:15 in Forks, so just over 5 hours. I was a little shocked to hear that, but then I remembered how tired I was and decided that I should still be asleep. I simply nodded my head at him and snuggled closer to him, putting my head on his chest. He pulled me closer to him and kissed me on my forehead. I looked at him and planted an open-mouth kiss on the edge of his jaw. One of his hands went underneath my chin and pulled my mouth to his. His lips met mine halfway and his tongue wasted no time in tracing my lips. I let out a small moan as my fingers twined themselves in his hair. Our kisses were on the verge of turning into a full-blown make-out session when Emmett was suddenly pounding at the door. "Edward, Bella, Carlisle told me to tell you two to stop sucking off each other's faces," he yelled through the door. Of course my face was instantly red. "Emmett, that was not what I said," I heard Carlisle yell at Emmett. "Stupid cock blocker," Edward muttered under his breath. I giggled at his word choice. He didn't usually say things like that. "That's the whole point, Edward. You and Bella aren't supposed to have sex for another whole week," Emmett yelled again. I blushed even redder this time. Truth be told, even though it wasn't much, that was the farthest that Edward and I had gone since the miscarriage. We still hadn't talked about what Esme had proposed to us, but I had a feeling he wanted to put off that conversation until we knew what was going to happen to Renesmee. It wouldn't be fair to bring another vampire, human child into this world if he or she was only going to have a short and quick life. It just wouldn't be fair to anyone, and it would be really hard me and Edward. "Come on, love," Edward's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. "Let's go out there before he busts down the door." I laughed as he pulled me up to a sitting position, even though I knew that he wasn't kidding. There was no doubt in my mind that Emmett really would break down the door if we didn't go out. So I nodded and pulled on my shoes before standing up and walking hand in hand with Edward to the door. Finally, Emmett yelled from his place on the couch next to Rose. Everyone laughed as my face heated up for the third time in less than 10 minutes. Edward and I made our way back to the seats we were sitting in before. I turned to see Renesmee sitting on Jacob's lap sleeping. "Jake, why don't you go lay her down in the room?" I asked, surprised that no one had suggested that earlier. Jake looked like he wanted to say that he didn't mind holding her, but a quick look at Edward made him keep his mouth shut. He nodded quickly and stood up to carry Renesmee to the room. He left the door open, so I watched as he laid her down in the middle of the bed and threw a blanket on top of her. I expected him to come back then, but he surprised me by getting the extra pillows and putting them on the edges of the bed. It took me a second to understand why he did that. This way, if Renesmee tossed and turned in her sleep, she wouldn't fall off the bed. Then I watched as he placed a gentle kiss on her forehead before leaving the room. He closed the door but left it open a sliver so we could still see her. It was when Jacob did things like this that it was hard to hate him for imprinting on my daughter. I could tell that he really did care for her, and I wasn't stupid, so I knew that Renesmee felt the same way. I wanted to hate him with all my heart, but I was finding it harder every day. Don't get me wrong, I didn't like any more than the day it happened, but I was slowly starting to accept it. When Jake returned to his seat, he noticed me staring at him and asked, "What?" "Nothing," I said before turning back around and watching whatever dumb MTV show Emmett had turned on. I spent the rest of the plane ride watching TV and joking around with the Cullens and Jake. Of course, a few of the jokes were at Jake's expense, but the majority of the ones Emmett told were at the expense of mine and Edward's love life. Well, I guess lack of love life before we were married would be more accurate. I didn't notice how fast the time flew by, so it was a bit of a surprise when Tony's voice came on the intercom speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to land, so please put your seatbelts on at this time." I quickly got up and ran to the room to wake up Renesmee. Once she was fully alert, I picked her up and brought her out of the room. I sat her down in the same seat she sat in when we took off. I buckled both off our seatbelts before leaning back as the plane started to land. I wasn't sure, but I think it was how shaky the plane got when landing and taking off that made me nervous. It turned out to not be as bad as I thought it would be, but I still felt a little nauseated. As soon as the stairs were lowered, the boys took off their seatbelts and went to go get the luggage. I stood up at a more human pace and picked up Renesmee. Then I went down the stairs to find that the sun had already set and everyone had their luggage in hand. We all walked into the airport, but this time I didn't even attempt to see what was going on. Everyone was talking Portuguese, so it wasn't like I would know what was going on anyway. After about 15 minutes we made our way outside to our rental cars. There were 4 in all, and I had no idea what the difference was between them. They all looked like really fast sports cars to me, so they really weren't all that different from the ones we had at home. I watched silently as Edward fought his brothers and fathers for which one we would use. In the end though, Edward ended up putting our luggage into a shiny back car, smiling smugly as Emmett shot him death glares. Edward had Jacob set up the car seat for Renesmee, so when he was done I buckled her in and kissed her forehead. Before I could lean away she told me that she loved me and I mumbled it back to her. Then I got out of the way so Jacob could get in. He was riding with us again. Edward walked around to the front of the car and opened my door and buckled me in, which caused me to blush. From the review mirror I could see Jacob roll his eyes. I shot him my best attempt at a death glare. We quickly pulled out of the parking lot and followed Emmett and Rosalie this time as we made our way to the hotel we would be staying at while we were in Brazil. We made it to the hotel in record time and we quickly checked in. This time the person helping us was a guy and Edward growled at him when he looked at me. I swear sometimes he can be just a little too overprotective. As soon as we made it up to our penthouse suite, Edward led me to our side. I was way too tired to take in details about how the place was decorated, but it seemed really big. There was a room right next to ours that would be Renesmee's. Edward grabbed her from me and put her to sleep as I went into our suite and took a shower. At this point I was practically dead on my feet and all I wanted to do was take a warm bath, then put on my sweats and snuggle with my vampire husband as he sang me to sleep. But of course Alice would never let me have my way. I opened up my suitcase in search of something comfortable to sleep in, but all I could find was lingerie. It was much more modest than the scraps of satin and silk she had packed for me on my honeymoon, but it was still lingerie nonetheless. I let out a frustrated sigh as I finally just grabbed something at random and threw it on. It turned out to be a midnight blue nightgown that fell just above my knees and had a black lace trim on the top and spaghetti straps. I walked out of the bathroom and into the bedroom to find Edward already lying in bed waiting for me. "I hate your sister," I growled as I walked over to him. "Why?" he asked, genuinely surprised. "Because she packed nothing but lingerie for me again," I sighed, exasperated. Edward merely laughed. "Well, it seems that I may have to thank her for that." His eyes roamed me up and down. I blushed as I climbed into bed next to him and snuggled close to his chest. "Yeah, we'll see who you're thanking when all the other hot guys here see me in what Alice packed for me to wear out." He growled slightly as I laughed. Once he had quieted down he started humming my lullaby to me and I drifted off to sleep. Bella Pav. The next morning when I woke up I was in the arms of Edward and I sighed contentedly before opening my eyes. He was looking down at me smiling. "Good morning, my love," he whispered. "Hi, what have you been up to?" I asked. "Nothing. Just watching my beautiful wife sleep and listening to her babble while she sleeps." I blushed. What did I say this time? Oh, just the usual. "I love you, Edward, and Renesmee is so beautiful. I love her with all my heart." Although there was a "Jacob is annoying" thrown into the mix this time. I blushed harder at the last statement, although I guess it could have been worse. "I see. What are we doing today?" "Well, much to Alice's dismay, today we are going to look for the tribe that can help us." This puzzled me. Why is Alice sad about that? She was hoping to shop before we did any of the hard work. Edward rolled his eyes at his sister's silliness. I laughed as I shook my head. "I swear shopping is all that girl ever thinks about." "Well, come on then. We best be getting ready before Alice burst through our door and dresses as herself," I groaned as I sat up and stretched. He laughed but got up anyway and went to his suitcase. I went to the restroom to do my morning rituals. After I was done with that I went back into our room and opened the suitcase that held my clothes for the day. On top of the clothes there were very specific instructions on what to wear and how to do my hair and makeup. The pixie had officially gone crazy. "Did Alice leave instructions for you too?" I asked Edward, who was already dressed and waiting for me on the bed. "Yes," he said with a roll of his eyes. I shook my head and grabbed the short denim shorts, blue t-shirt, and white undershirt. I quickly changed then went back to the bathroom with my hair and makeup stuff. I put off looking in the full-length mirror until I had styled my hair in the ponytail and put on the light makeup Alice assigned for the day. When I did look I almost wished that I hadn't. I still hadn't lost all of the baby weight yet, much to my dismay. Edward assured me time and time again that I looked fine, that I looked better, healthier, with more meat on my bones, but I was still insecure. The shirt Alice made me wear almost covered my baby belly but not quite, and the shorts were a little too short for my taste and showed a lot of my thighs, which thankfully hadn't blown up too much. I wouldn't say that I looked bad, but I certainly wasn't comfortable by any means. With a sigh I walked out of the bathroom. Edward's reaction made me feel better for about 5 seconds, then I felt self-conscious all over again. When he first saw me he froze, only his eyes moving to roam my body. Then he groaned and threw himself back on the bed. "What?" I asked. "Alice is not making the no-sex thing easy on me by any means," he groaned. I blushed and looked at the floor. And now I'm going to have to deal with the thoughts of vile men who can't keep their eyes off of married women. Edward, I doubt any guy will be looking at me like that. I still have a lot of weight to lose, and the way Alice dressed me makes me look like one of those fat girls who wear Daisy Dukes to make them feel skinny when they clearly aren't," I told him. Edward sat back up and looked me straight in the eye. "Bella, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever laid my eyes on, even with the extra weight, which I think you are making too big of a deal out of, and any man would be a fool not to see that." I blushed and looked down, then tentatively looked back into his eyes. "Really?" He jumped off the bed and was pinning me against the wall in the next second. Before I could ask him what he was doing, his mouth was on mine. This kiss was full of passion, lust, and most of all love. "Yes, really, Bella," Edward panted, still recovering from our heavy kiss even though he didn't need to breath. "How many times do I have to tell you before you believe me? You are beautiful and I will always love you no matter what you think you look like. You have no idea what you do to me." With that said, his mouth was back on mine. "I think I have an idea," I said when I could breathe again. He flashed me my favorite crooked smile, then leaned back down to capture my lips in another kiss. This one was slow and gentle. I could feel his love for me in every fiber of my being. He picked me up and I wrapped my legs around his waist as his hands went to my butt to support me. He walked us to the bed and he gently put me down on the edge so my legs were hanging off and he was standing over me. When I couldn't breathe anymore I broke away. His lips didn't leave my skin, instead they went to my neck and started leaving open mouth kisses on my jawline. "Edward, we need to stop," I breathed when I could think again. "Why?" he asked. "If we don't then this will turn into something more," I responded. When that didn't stop him I tried something else. "We need to wake up Renesmee and get her ready. Esme already took care of that for us," he smiled as he kissed the hollow beneath my ear. I was about to bring his mouth back to mine, unable to think of another excuse, when he froze, then quickly pulled us up to a more formal sitting position. I looked at him curiously when Alice walked through the door. "God, do you two ever stop making out?" she asked as she walked in the room. "What the heck, Alice? Ever heard of a little thing called knocking?" I fumed as I straightened out my shirt. "Hey, you're lucky that I warned Edward the first was coming in. I could have just barged in here," she retorted. "You did just barge in here," Edward grumbled. "Whatever, I'm here to tell you that we're getting ready to head out. So Bella, if you were planning on eating something then I suggest you do that now before Jacob eats all the food Esme made," she said, then started walking back out the door. She turned around at the doorway and said, "Oh, and Bella, you look great." I sighed, then turned to Edward and took his hand so we could walk to the kitchen. As we were walking out of the room Edward saw Ed. "I told you, you looked great." "Shut up," I said quickly. He simply laughed and closed the door behind us. We continued to walk down the hallway and into the kitchen where Jacob was indeed inhaling all the food he could. "Wow, Jake, thanks for leaving some for me," I said sarcastically as I walked over to the big island where Jacob and the food were. "Sorry Bella, but it was first come first serve," he replied, displaying his mouth full of chewed food. "Ew, seriously Jake, didn't anyone ever tell you that it's rude to talk with your mouth full?" I asked. He just rolled his eyes at me and continued eating. With a sigh I sat down and put what was left of the eggs and bacon on the spare plate left on the island, courtesy of Esme. When Jacob and I were both done eating we made our way to the front room where the rest of the family was waiting. "Okay, now that we're all here I would like to discuss what's going to happen today," Carlisle began after I took my seat next to Edward on the loveseat and Jacob sat down on the floor next to Renesmee. "Edward and I know the general location of where the Takunas tribe has made one of its villages. So we will set the coordinates in the GPS in our cars, and when we come to the point where the cars won't fit on the trail anymore we'll get out and travel on foot. When we do that we'll have to rely on our senses to find the tribe. When we finally find it, we will enter the village with open arms and let them know that we mean no harm and only wish to speak with their tribe leaders. Is that understood?" He finished looking at Emmett. "Why are you only looking at me?" Emmett asked. "Because we all know that you'll be the one to start a fight," Esme defended her other half. "No, I wouldn't," he protested. "Yes, you would," we all said almost simultaneously. He pouted as he leaned into Rosalie's side. "Another thing Carlyle and I thought we should discuss is Jacob," Edward started this time. "What about me?" Jacob asked, eyeing Edward wearily. "When we find the tribe we think you should stay in your human form," Edward stated. "What? Why?" he asked, incredulous. "Because, like Carlyle said, we don't want to come off as a threat. We want them to help us, and that's not going to happen if we have a horse-sized wolf with us." Since Jacob was still looking at everyone disbelievingly, Edward added, "If things get ugly then, and only then, you can transform to protect yourself." Finally Jacob nodded, his gaze settling on Renesmee. Then Carlyle was talking again, "And the last thing we need to discuss. If things do end in a fight, we are simply defending ourselves, we don't want to kill any of the tribe members. Am I understood?" This time he was looking at everyone. After we had all nodded our heads. "Good. Now that that's all cleared up, let's head out." We all stood up and walked to the entranceway, leaving the suite. After getting into our car, Edward turned on the GPS setting and put in the coordinates. "Now starting guide for your route destination. In 0.10 of a mile, turn right," the automated voice said. "Ah, seriously, those voices always get on my nerves," Jacob whined from the back seat. "Oh, suck it up, Jacob," I told him, turning my head to look him in the eyes. "But it's so creepy. It's like there's a person in your car that you don't know about, and the voices are so robotic, like a killer's." "It's okay, sweetie." I patted his knee and used a voice that you'd use to calm a child waking up from a nightmare. "The monster isn't coming to get you, she's not real." "Oh, shut up." He pushed my hand off his knee as Edward broke out in laughter. "Do you need your blankie, pup?" Edward asked tauntingly as I giggled. "Shut it, bloodsucker," he retorted. "Okay, both of you cut it out," I said. "Don't act so innocent. Bella, you are the one who started this," Jacob grumbled. "Yes, I did, and I am sorry. Now stop sulking, and Edward, stop teasing Jacob." "Whatever." Jacob sighed at the same time Edward sighed. "Yes, love." Jacob was looking at Edward through the review mirror, smiling. "What?" Edward asked. "You are so whipped," he laughed. "I am not. Really. You tell her. Yes, love, to everything. Look who's talking. You can't stand to be away from Renesmee for more than 5 seconds, or else you're in agony. You're the same way with Bella. But at least I have a backbone and I could refuse if I wanted to." "Then why don't you?" "Okay," I yelled, interrupting their meaningless banter. "Enough already. We all know that deep down all men are whipped. They have to be, because if they're not they get in trouble." "Whatever. I don't need to be whipped, I choose to be," Jacob said under his breath. "Same here," Edward agreed. I raised one eyebrow at him. "Oh really?" "Yes." "Okay." I leaned back against the seat. "We'll see how that goes." Edward started looking a little nervous, then he reached out to grab my hand and brought it to his mouth to kiss the back of it. Jacob had his smirk plastered back on his face as he chuckled. "Shut up," Edward snapped. Jack held his hands up in surrender as he shook his head. I giggled a little, then twined my fingers with his and brought our hands down to rest on the console. I looked up at him and smiled. His returning smile was dazzling. We drove the rest of the way in silence. We were in Leticia, a town that sat right on the border of Colombia and Brazil. The Amazon River ran through the south side of town where the rainforest got thicker. Finally we made a turn that led us into the heart of the Brazil rainforest. The trees were huge and leafy. Occasionally we would see a wild animal in the trees watching our cars go by. When I looked up I could see dozens of colorful birds flying and monkeys jumping from tree to tree. The trail we were on was very narrow and the leaves on the plants would brush the sides of the car. Finally the path was too narrow to follow anymore. Edward stopped the car, then looked at Jacob. "Remember what we said this morning?" "I know," he replied. We all got out of the car and watched everyone else pull up behind us. When everyone was out we gathered around in a circle and Carlyle took the floor again. "Okay everyone, close your eyes if you need to and try to use your senses to find any signs of humans. Jacob handed me Renesmee so he could focus on the forest around him. Most of them closed their eyes to focus. Alice's eyes glazed over and she walked forward a few steps. Jasper took a deep breath as he turned in a circle. Jacob bent down and touched the ground and smelled the dirt. Edward cocked his head to the side and started walking in the same direction as Alice. Rosalie kept her eyes open but they weren't focused on anything. Emmett had his eyes wide open and they looked like they were searching the forest for something. Carlisle and Esme both stood tall with their eyes closed and their hands open, fingers spread wide. They all opened their eyes and came back into focus at the same time. This way, Alice and Edward saw Ede at the same time, pointing perpendicular to the path we were on now. "Are you sure?" Esme asked. "Yes," Alice answered. "I see us running for a few miles then being stopped by guards, but it's not a very solid vision because of Jacob and Renesmee." Alice wasn't very happy when she learned that Jacob was coming. It wasn't because she didn't want him here, but because her already blurry visions, caused by Renesmee, became even blurrier. That's why we were having to do so much guesswork, plus we wouldn't know how the tribe would react to us. It made all of us uneasy and on edge. "And I think I'm getting fragments of thoughts so they can't be that far away," Edward added. "All right then," Carlisle said, "let's get going." "Wait, Carlisle," Jacob said. "Yes, Jacob. Can I at least transform right now so I can keep up with you, then when we get closer to the guards I'll change back?" he asked. Carlisle thought for a second then agreed. "Then you can carry Nessie on your back." Jake nodded then ran into the trees to change. I gave Carlisle a look for the use of the hated nickname. "Sorry Bella," he apologized. I simply rolled my eyes and looked back to the trees where Jake was coming out in his wolf form. He walked over to me and turned around waiting for me to put Renesmee on his back. With a sigh I walked forward and gently placed my daughter on his back. "Hold on tight, Renesmee," I said as she adjusted herself to get more comfortable. "Don't worry Mama, I'll be fine," she said as she grabbed two big fistfuls of Jacob's fur. I stepped back then blew her a kiss before walking back to Edward and getting on his back piggyback style. "Are you ready, love?" Edward asked as I gripped his neck in a chokehold. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied. I was nervous about meeting the tribe that could potentially help my daughter. "Everyone stay together and if someone hears or smells something stop and tell us at once," Carlisle said. After everyone nodded he continued, "Then let's go." With that everyone was running. Running through the rainforest was much different than running through the forests back home. The air wasn't cold like in Forks so it didn't sting my open eyes, instead the breeze was welcome in hot air like this. The scenery was different too. The huge trees and exotic plants swept past us as we speed through the forest. We passed a few animals on our path, and the ones we did pass started howling, screeching, and just making noise as soon as they saw us. A few of the more dangerous ones even bared their teeth showing us their fangs. I swear if Rosalie hadn't pulled Emmett away from the Margay he would have gotten into a full-blown out fight with it. Finally after a few more minutes of running we stopped. "Edward, Alice," Carlisle asked. "I can't see anything other than we're close to where the guard stops us." "I'm sorry, Carlisle," Alice apologized. "It's okay Alice. What about you Edward?" "I can hear the thoughts of the guards. They're about a mile away but they don't know that we're here yet," Edward reported. "Good. Are they armed?" Esme asked with a slightly worried expression, her eyes flashing to me. "Yes, they have spears and bows and arrows, but nothing advanced. They are on lookout for intruders but I don't think they'll attack if we come forward with open arms," Edward continued. "All right then, everyone you know what we're here for. We don't want to give them a reason to attack so try and be open-minded to any conditions they may give us," Carlisle said looking each and every one of us in the eye. After a few seconds he looked at Jacob and said, "Jacob go ahead and give Renesmee back to Bella and transform back." He looked at me when he said Renesmee and smiled slightly. I rolled my eyes at him again and jumped off of Edward's back. Jacob made a muffled sound in the back of his throat to show that he had heard and understood. He turned around so I could get Renesmee of his back, then he walked into a part of the forest where the trees were thick. I held Renesmee close to my chest and buried my face in her long, bronze ringlets. I felt Edward come behind me and pulled me into his embrace, wrapping his arms around both of us. "Everything will be fine, my love," Edward reassured me. "How do you know that?" I asked him, turning around to face him. What if they don't want to help us because they see Renesmee? What if they take her from us and kill her? And even if they do help us, what happens if they tell us that she'll die? Calm down, love, let's just take this one step at a time. If they don't want to help us, then we'll just have to do more research until we can find the answers we need. And I promise you we will not let them get anywhere near Renesmee. I'll be able to read their thoughts, and if they show any harm towards her, we'll be out of there so fast they'll think we were all just a nightmare. And if they do tell us that Renesmee will die someday, then we'll spend the rest of her life with her, making great memories with her and showing her the world. By now I was near hysterical, trying to control my sobs so I wouldn't worry Renesmee. My Renesmee, my darling daughter, my little nudger who I fought for and was strong enough to carry until she didn't need me to anymore. I didn't know how I would be able to cope if she did end up dying. Shish, my love, it'll be fine, he tried to calm me down again. How do you know? I asked again. I don't know, he said, looking me straight in the eye. But I have faith, you gave me that. You gave me yourself and you gave me a beautiful daughter, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you're both taken care of. You gave me faith that everything will work out fine. Who are you and what have you done with my husband? I asked, giving him a small smile. I'm still here, love. That's just how much you've changed me. Okay, are you two done being lovey-dovey yet? Jacob asked, coming back out from the trees. Yes, we are, I told him, giving him an annoyed look. Everyone, let's go, Carlisle said, taking the lead at the front of the group. Everyone lined up behind Carlisle while Edward pulled me and Renesmee to the back of the group, behind everyone else. He put his arm around my waist and leaned down to kiss both of us on our foreheads. I love you both, he whispered. I love you too, I said, while Renesmee put one hand on each of us, telling us that she loved the both of us too. With one last deep breath we all walked forward, deeper into the forest. After about 20 minutes of walking I could hear two people talking in some odd language. Is that them? I whispered to Edward. He simply nodded back, looking forward with his lips in a tight line. I nodded to myself, then started walking again. Not 30 seconds later did the guards hear us. They both sprang forward, barring spears, yelling what I think was, "Stop," in their language. Edward immediately pulled me behind him. I gave him a very pointed look and he relaxed but still kept his body angled, so Renesmee and I were behind his body. Carlisle started talking to them in their language. Before we left, Edward and Carlisle decided to learn a little bit of the Tukuna language so they would be able to communicate with them a little better. When it seemed like the guards wouldn't be convinced that we just wanted to talk with their leader, Edward stepped in and defended Carlisle. I have no idea what he said, but whatever it was made them talk amongst themselves. Then one of them looked back at us and jerked his head to where I assumed the village was. Carlisle turned to us then and said, "He wants us to follow him, but if we show any hostility towards any of the tribe members they will ask us to leave. So everyone on their best behavior and don't give them any reason to truly believe that we are the Libashaman of their legends." Then I realized that this was the same tribe Kaure, from Out Honeymoon, was part of. So they knew of vampires and human vampire children, but would they be willing to answer our questions was the question. I looked at Edward and he took my hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. I looked forward again and walked with the rest of the group. Not long after we started walking did I see men fishing in the Amazon River. They were tall and dark. They looked up as we walked past them, and a few of them widened their eyes when they saw us and dropped their stuff and took off to, I'm assuming, the village. I would guess that they wanted to warn their families that the Libashaman were coming. About 5 minuets later we came to the entrance of the village. Children were painting and dancing as adults were working in fields. It looked like they were picking the crops. As we walked through the center of the village, people looked up to see who the newcomers were. Mothers ran to get their children and took them inside the huts. Fathers stood in front of their families, and children merely stood there, entranced by the Cullens, letting their parents push them around. All of the adults wore looks of hatred mixed with fear on their faces. I was glad that it was a cloudy day today and all of the foliage from the trees helped block out the sun so the Tukunas didn't have another reason to believe the Cullens are vampires. Finally we were brought to a hut that was bigger than all the rest. The guards told something to Carlisle, then they went inside the hut. They said to wait here and they would talk to their leader to see if he would grant us with an audience, he explained to us. I was suddenly very nervous. Soon we would, hopefully, find out information about Renesmee that could help us. I felt a wave of calmness wash over me and I gave Jasper a thankful smile. He smiled back and shrugged his shoulders, letting me know that it was no big deal. 10 minutes later the guards came back out and talked to Carlisle some more. They said that their leader will speak to us, but we will only be allowed to stand at the entranceway of the hut. Understood, Carlisle told us. Of course we all nodded in agreement. It was understandable that he would want to put a distance between himself and vampires. I looked at Edward and he gave me a reassuring smile and kissed my forehead. Then I turned to Jacob to find him looking at Renesmee with a worried expression. "It'll be fine, Jake," I told him. I had to believe that, or else I would have a panic attack from all of the anxiety I was feeling. He nodded, then gave me a small smile and walked forward with everyone else. I took a deep breath, then followed Jake inside the hut. The hut was about 12 by 14 and all the way across the room, who I'm assuming was the leader of the tribe, sat on a huge chair that seemed to be made from a rotted tree. At least 10 more guards with spears and some with bows and arrows surrounded him. The 10 of us were all standing by the entrance of the hut looking around. He started talking in his native language and I was surprised when one of the guards beside him translated. "You have asked for an audience and against my better judgment I have granted it. Now what do you want?" "Please, we come in peace. We were hoping you could give us answers," Carlisle said, ever the gentle leader. "Don't just go beating around the bush. I haven't got all day." "Answers to what?" "Bella, please bring Renesmee forward." Carlisle looked back at me, knowing that I wouldn't give Renesmee up now. I nodded and started walking to the front with Edward right by my side. When they saw Renesmee they all gasped and started pointing and yelling. After a few minutes the leader was able to calm them down some, but they still looked shaken. "Have you ever seen a child like this?" Carlisle asked, straight to the point. "Yes, that is an evil child. Why have you brought it here? It is dangerous and should have been killed at the first opportunity you had," the translator yelled. It sounded like everyone was snarling, but Carlisle got them to control themselves. "She is not evil, she has amazing self-control and she would never harm anyone. This human here," Carlisle said, pointing to me, "is her mother. She is very much human and she is still alive." "Nonsense. That thing will kill us all. You have been a fool to let it live." I was near hysterics again and Edward could tell. "Please," I started to beg, "she won't hurt you. All we ask is that you help us and then we'll leave and you'll never have to see her again." Edward rubbed my arm for comfort, but it wasn't working too well. After what seemed to be a very heated discussion between the leader and his guards, the translator spoke up. "Very well, ask us your questions and we will answer them to the best of our ability, but then we expect you to leave at once." "Of course. So we know that you have seen a child like this before, but have you ever seen one mature?" Carlisle asked. "No. When the mother becomes pregnant with a child like that we usually banish her to the wild so the child isn't born here. But on the rare occasion the child is born in the tribe, we kill it after it has been born." I immediately felt my spirits go down. There had to be someone somewhere out there that could give us answers to our questions. "I see. Well, have you ever heard of any children like this outside your tribe?" Carlisle would ever be the optimist. "Yes, we have. My guards have reported seeing a child like that in a Libashaman traveling together from time to time. We think they live not too far down on the other side of the Amazon River." My hopes suddenly soared at the thought of another child like Renesmee alive. "Thank you very much. That is all we need and we will be on our way now." I looked over at Carlisle to see that he had a huge smile on his face. "Of course, but I hope you understand why I want my guard to escort you out." "Yes, we do." "Then be gone with you." Carlisle bowed his head, then motioned for us to follow him out. After we got outside, the same 2 guards that brought us into the village started leading us out. As I looked around this time I noticed everyone was in their huts and not a soul was outside. It didn't take us as long to leave and soon we were at the entrance of the village. Both guards stood aside and motioned for us to leave. As soon as we were out of the guard's sight, Carlisle turned to us. "Very good, everyone. I'm very happy that you were all able to maintain control. And even though they didn't have the answers we were looking for, but we did get one step closer to finding someone like Renesmee. Jacob, go ahead and transform so we can head out." I let out a very deep breath and said, "Well, that didn't go as planned." "No, it went even better," Alice said, turning to me. I wasn't sure how today would turn out because of all the holes in my vision, so in my opinion today went better than I could have ever hoped. She's right. When they started talking about how we should have killed Renesmee, I was afraid a fight was going to break out, Emmett pointed out. Yeah, I wanted to lunge at that leader guy when he said that, Rosalie growled. Stupid Indian didn't know what he was getting himself into, Edward said from my side. Jake growled in agreement as he came out of the trees. I simply nodded as I put Renesmee on Jake's back again, then walked over to Edward to jump on his back. The run back to the cars was short and silent. When we finally got there, I jumped off Edward's back and took Renesmee off so Jake could go transform again. We all got into our cars silently, and as soon as Jacob came back we took off. Do you think we'll find the other child? I asked Edward. I can only hope, my love. If they're in the area like the tribe said they are, then it shouldn't be too hard to find them, he responded honestly. Yeah, Bella. I mean, if they're on the other side of the Amazon River and the tribe has seen them regularly, then it shouldn't be too hard to find a scent and follow it, Jacob added. I hope you two are right, I said, looking at my daughter through the review mirror. Of course we are, Jacob said cockily. I rolled my eyes at him, then leaned my head back and closed my eyes. It had been a long day already and it wasn't even over yet. I wasn't really keeping track of time, so it surprised me when I felt Edward's cold hand on my arm and felt his cool breath on my ear. We're here, Bella. I opened my eyes and looked into his golden ones for a few moments before I leaned forward to give him a chaste kiss. He returned my kiss before unbuckling my seat belt for me and reaching over to open my door. I smiled at him, then got out of the car to find that everyone else was waiting for us so we could go in. I blushed a little when Emmett gave me a wink while passing me, but really it wasn't as if we were making out. Although I really wanted to. I quickly got rid of those thoughts, seeing as Edward and I still wouldn't be able to have sex for a week. I sighed, then walked around the front of the car, took Edward's hand, then started for the hotel. As soon as we were in our suite again, Jacob gave Renesmee and me and him headed towards the kitchen. A few days prior to the trip, Renesmee had decided that she would go hunting with the family instead of having to eat human food. I swear someday I was going to get her to eat human food and she was going to like it. I quickly made us some burgers. Well, I made one for myself and I made about 5 for Jacob. We in silence, and it wasn't until Jacob had swallowed his last bite that he made a noise. I'm going to go plan how to find the vampires. Okay, I think I'm going to put Renesmee to sleep, then get ready for bed myself. He nodded, then stood up and I followed him out to the front room where everyone else was sitting. I walked over to Edward, who had Renesmee on his lap, and said, I'm going to go get her ready for bed, it's been a long day. And it had been. My poor daughter was falling asleep already. Okay, love, we're going to stay here and strategize for a little while, but I promise I'll be there soon, he told me. I nodded as a big yawn came out and I picked up Renesmee and walked to her room. After I